I love when YouTube takes forever just to get loaded. I don't know if it's my computer. I don't know if it's a connection. I don't know what it is. But hey, we're live. Welcome back to another Plasticast. It's just gonna be me and Megamus tonight. Dawn and Cyburn are both out on assignment, so that's just how that goes. So, Megamus, go ahead and introduce yourself. You there? He muted himself.
Did I?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, because I had intro. Megamus Mega Toy Fan on Facebook. Been around for a little bit. Um, Mostly collecting, doing shows, and just having fun.
And this week is kind of a bit of a sort of a continuation of last week, dealing with a couple bots that came out, and then we're gonna sit here and talk about combining robots, how they all worked, with all of our experiences. He's experienced something I haven't. I've experienced something he hasn't. So we're gonna kick the ball around. So we're gonna talk about some two combiner bots that you had recently got. So which ones were those?
Yeah, so I've been waiting for uh, our area to get any remnants of anything new, and I have not had any luck. But a buddy of mine down south found both air raid and slingshot, and then so he got those for me and sent them up to me. So I got them the other day. I am very happy to say that this is the first time in a long time that I just sat there and transformed these things without watching videos or reading instructions. They're pretty straightforward, and I like that. Uh, there's some things about them I don't like. There's other things I really like, but the more simplistic um, transformation, I do like it. And I don't mean simplistic because they're, like one, two step, you know, robots or whatever. It if you've ever transformed robots and you grab these, you'll be able to do it because you kind of know how this arm folds, how that goes, and it's definitely better knowing what the mode looks like. Because I grew up with these characters, I know what they look like. So knowing that, oh, there's the fuselage. Oh, that's got to go back here. Oh, this goes this way. Or that head's got to turn around. Um, so that made it. Yeah, I do like that. My big thing and one of my gripes is I absolutely love Masterpiece, but they are statues because you transform them once and they're such a pain in the butt. You don't do it again. So, but my thoughts on these um, is let's go with the robot mode first. And in my opinion, Air Raid knocks it out of the park. Just absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, he's got his backpack, but so did the G1. Um, my only little gripe would be that these vertical fins, and they're made to pop off. Unless you angle them, they sit lower than his feet. They kind of hit the ground before his feet do. So you got to angle them a little. That's it. It looks amazing. Great, great, tight, no wiggle. You can shake him. There's no shaking. Um, and then you get to the jet mode, and it literally is a jet with a little scrunched up robot underneath. There's no hiding. The whole robot's there. You literally are squishing the legs, putting the arms on the side, and hope no one looks underneath. That's pretty much how that one goes. So I would give him a definite, 10 on the robot, but probably like a 5 on Jet. And
So
then,
kind of like the Combiner Wars ones, where most of them you could actually see the robot unless you turn the head around.
yeah, yeah. Um, so then, Slingshot now, great looking robot. Let me see. Can you hear? I have my mic angled right. There we go. There we go. See if you can hear. Anyway, that's his waist shaking. It's very loose, and I don't know why, unless it's part of the combine mode that he separates, which is what I think it is. Because if he's an arm, I'm pretty sure they separate just like the Stunticons do.
Have you tried
So that,
separating them yet?
yeah, I tried. I don't want to break it, but it seems like it. It just seems really loose.
It seems like
But
just maybe because from what I was told, they're just friction hold. They don't have like
I know that
a
the
spring or anything, do they?
those those the Stunticons are like that, but this does not feel like a. Man, I'm pulling pretty good.
Well, the funny
I
thing
don't want
is I've
it
seen
worse.
people take the Stunticon
Mm-hmm.
ones and plug them into the aerial bot ones. Literally, I guess the ports are compatible, so you can plug like the
They
front
probably
one in
are.
the car and then the back of the jet or something like that to make those. What was it? Like the Matchbox connectors back in the day. Those silly
You
little
know what it really reminded me
connectors.
of, and you forgot this: the MicroMaster combiner. They had like an oil tank, and any of the bigger bases had one vehicle that separated front and back, and you could swap them out because they all had the same ports. So it kind of reminded me of that. But with Slingshot, his robot mode, they didn't do the backpack thing like they did on Air Raid. Instead, they left it all on his big chunky feet, and so that he just, to me, it makes a poor looking bot mode. But when you transform him into Jet, and the main thing is remember to spin his head around. There are no robot bits anywhere, all the way around it. It's extremely clean. I mean, it's outstanding. I would give that a 10 on the Jet mode. I'd probably give him about a 5 or a 6. Well, because he looks good in the front, so let's just say a 7
Hmm?
on the bot mode. Because he does look nice, presentable looking at every angle but the back. The back is where the issue is. The arms are on a double hinge for transformation, so you could have him completely fold his arms straight up. I mean, it's very good articulation on both of them. Um, the little looseness in the waist is kind of bugging me, but I'll probably look into it further and see if that's just a design flaw or if it's made. If it is supposed to pop apart, I know some of them you had to push tabs in to get it to pop, and maybe it's that, but I don't see where that's at either.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not really sure. Yeah, I think it's this whole combination thing. I was talking a little bit before we started about it. If you
mm-hmm.
guys have not seen the video, Toys R Us has gotten pre-production copies. This guy legitly gets them. He's not like the guy we don't really want to call out, but everybody knows who he is. He's not one of those guys. He actually has been working with Hasbro getting hold of pre-production copies, and he got Silverbolt. And Silverbolt, from what I've gathered, when you put him into his skeletal combiner mode, the arms and the legs are swappable with Menasor, but you have to remove the entire arm like skeletal arm portion from Silverbolt and replace it with the Minosaur one because they plug on.
So, from what you can tell, the ports are the same.
Mm.
Okay, and if that's the case, then you really could, once you get a complete Superion, you can gestalt change them just by popping, even if it's got the skeleton for Superion, it should click on Minosaur and vice versa. So you do have, we're getting back to that old, the Gestalt, which if people don't know, in that they could swap. They could swap limbs with other combiners.
Well, yeah, like
And
the I know
do
the
that again.
lore, like on Motormaster, I know the lore is basically Combiner Wars pegs because I've seen people take the Combiner Wars ones and plug them in, and they plug in just
Yes,
fine. Um,
yes. I had a Combiner Wars Silverbolt actually, which they redid into uh, Computron main bot. Can't think of the name of it, but anyway,
Scattershot.
Scattershot. Thank you. And I remember those ports. They're the same. You pull a little tab back, you slot it in. The little tab slides over it, so it keeps it from popping up. They're the same. So that technology they've kept. Okay, and they're saying you might need to speak up a little louder.
Oh, I turned up my mic because I'm using
Okay.
a different mic this time. I'm actually using my dynamic
Right.
mic. I
I
was
know you were
having
having
issues
problems
with
with
my
your other
other
mic.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Um,
I don't know what it was, but hey, it's fixed
yeah.
this week, guys. Sorry about last week.
Yeah. And then for some reason they come with two guns again. I don't know why they feel the need to do that. You know, when we get to start to talk about some of the other stuff, like all the Stunticons, they came with two guns, and it's like they never came with two guns. They came with a vehicle gun, but they only came with one gun. So I don't understand why we have two. I would have rather than have these two itty bitty guns. Maybe had a beefier, just single gun or something that I don't think that they're cartoon accurate, but they might be.
Are they close to the
They're definitely
toy
not
gun
toy.
though?
No, they're not. They're not close to the toy guns at
Okay,
all.
because I know the original toy guns from G1 and G2, they just slipped over the arm because there
Right,
wasn't a hole.
right. But like Slingshot, he has a gun with two barrels. Each of them have two barrels. And while one of the aerial bots did have that, it wasn't him. It was one of the others.
Did the
And
guns
then
combine together?
they do not,
Okay,
and they didn't in the old one, of course.
right.
Um, but let's see. I got those in. Um, I got a vintage Star Wars figure, which I don't buy many of, but I've been looking for this. This one's called a. It is a Imperial Snowtrooper Univisor.
Ooh,
Instead of having two separate eyes, they painted it straight across, and it makes a Univisor, and it's molded that way. It's a little different mold, but I found one, and the capes are usually all destroyed, and this one is mint. So I was very happy to add him to the collection.
yeah, that's pretty crazy. I know that our shop, because if you guys don't know, back in time, comics and toys, yes, unplugged the crap out of them. Um, they got in a sunken cheek Tuscan Raider,
Oh,
the
Hollow
Sand
Cheek, yeah,
People. Yes,
yeah, Hollow Cheek.
super rare to find those. But yeah,
Yeah,
he
about
got one in.
250, $400, anywhere around that about.
Yep.
Yep. Oh, and while I'm sitting here, I look over and I see Waspinator again,
Mm-hmm.
and love this figure. Um, right now at Target, they're $18. They're $18. There's a 30% off going on at Target right now, and they've got that Legacy 4 pack if you can find it. They got the new stuff, like that the movie um, Constructicons. I want to say his name's Scavenger, but it's not. It's the big red one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, He he's like $46.
Now, is this
He might be.
this is off new ones too, not just what has been there, right?
Those are brand new.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you guys out there
It,
want
it
your G2
literally says
Grimlock, go get one. You better go get
right.
one. You can get a discount
It
now.
literally says 30% off Transformers. That's it. That's the promo. So pretty good if you haven't been able to find them. And yeah, they're even throwing the brand new ones that just come in that no one can find 30% off.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty
definitely.
crazy. Seeing the leaked listing, knowing that they're going to be completing the Dinobots in G2 is pretty. It's got a lot of people stoked. So,
It's neat. It's neat. I got very, very jaded when we weren't getting Masterpiece of the rest of them. And I was really, really not wanting to go third party. And I still really don't. But it doesn't look like even in the MPG they're going to do them.
no.
But these, the ones they're putting out now, the Studio Series ones, they're pretty good. If they were just a, you know, 20% bigger, then they would match up perfectly with the Masterpiece, and you could call whatever banner you want, and I'd be fine with it.
I mean, to be honest, the generation stuff has almost took place of Masterpiece. Because the reason I say this is
Yeah,
because
because it's
if you
gone.
look at the Bumblebee that they came out with, and the newer generations line, if you look at the way the feet wrap, like the doors wrap around his feet, just like the Masterpiece version did. It's just
Mm-hmm.
downscaled, and it's simpler. That I mean,
It
to
is.
me, Masterpiece should be accurate, but it shouldn't take. Like I think I was listening to this guy called That Toy Guy, and he just got hold of like the newer, not the Genrai, but the Optimus that came out. That's more, I think it's cartoon accurate colors or something. It's one of those,
Okay.
and it took
Yeah.
him 45 minutes to put that thing from truck mode to robot mode.
How about that?
And
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
like,
still waiting for
what
the Super
fun
Gen
is
Right.
this?
I'm still waiting for that, but I saw some reviews on it, and there's a lot going on there. Like when I got what was it? Death Stars and even Star Saber.
Hmm?
They're not. You don't just pop them out, open them up like you did a G1, and there it is. No, there's a lot to them. And then the problem with that is like you're finding that there's issues when you first get them, like Hound, Masterpiece Hound.
Mm-hmm.
I never transformed it. The store I bought it from, I knew a guy that worked there, and I said, "Do me a favor." I said, "Transform it into robot mode. Ship it to me that way. I don't want to touch it because they are so notorious for breaking." And then I found out on my own that Sunstreaker for some reason, and I guess it's the plastic, because I pulled him off the shelf and I was like, I think I'll go ahead and transform him. Front panel snapped right off. They evidently the pins that they use for those panels to slide over time, they tighten
Mm-hmm.
and they crack. And I mean, to me, it really, really seems like a very rapid, similar scenario to GPS.
I mean, to me, when they put together masterpiece ones, there shouldn't be like all these huge quality controls. I mean, I admit MPO1 had an issue with its legs locking sometimes because of how heavy it was, but
Yeah, yeah,
it really wasn't that bad of a toy. It didn't break that much. Unlike the Megatron that was notorious for snapping because it had such fiddly little bits, you know.
yeah. What was that called? The Year of the Goat?
Hmm?
Is that the Soundwave one
I
where
think
he's all
so.
clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in robot mode, right above his feet, there are these two little hooks. Okay, that when you depress it in cassette mode, it opens up the legs so that you can pull them apart. Both of mine snapped right off. and I only transformed this thing once. But it's that clear plastic, and it's that new stuff.
Well, the newer plastics they're using, I mean, it's not like it used to be during Fall of Cybertron. Everybody remembers the Fall of Cybertron stuff from the game Fall of Cybertron, not the stuff for Siege and all this. I'm talking, you know, 2013, 2014. A lot of
Hmm?
the toys then were very thin. And I don't know if that one, well, no, that one wouldn't have came out around that time, but I do know there was a lot of issues with some of the masterpieces during that time because of the plastic quality. And plastic quality really hasn't gotten that much better since then. Some of it has, but not all of it, because you got stuff that just yellows. Like
Yeah,
you
but I
have
mean, we're not
Metasaurs
talking
that
about a $15 toy here.
no,
That's ridiculous.
you're talking over $100 for half of these, and it's there shouldn't be any quality problems whatsoever with any of this stuff.
No,
Um,
no. When it's so mainstream that no one wants to touch a hound, that they'd rather get the Chinese knockoff,
hmm?
and it's not. They don't get it just because it's cheaper. I haven't heard any of them breaking. Just stuff like that.
Well, I mean, that kind of goes back to thinking about like how combiners work. Like our G1 combiners, yeah, if you weren't really careful with the heads would snap off, you know.
Hmm.
But when you went into combiner wars, it seems to me a lot of the issues with the combiner wars wasn't the connections. It was more or less like the waste to the main robot that was in the center. Sometimes those ratchets were a little weak.
Hmm.
Like I've heard of Silverbolt falling over pretty easily. Metasaur, because of the way it was designed, was kind of odd anyway. Um, but to be honest, those are kind of fixable issues. You don't actually have breakage. You just have things
So,
getting weak. And
and
I'd rather be
what?
weak and fix it than snap in half. You know.
Yeah, but I mean, if you remember, I believe it was Masterpiece Jetfire that had the weak springs, and that if you contacted Hasbro, they would send you new springs with new little tabs that go inside. The springs compress on the tabs, which make the clicking noise. So they would offer a solution. Um, the problem is like with Hound, when you have a toy that is breaking not in just one part but several parts, and they say, how do you really fix it without just saying, I'm going to replace your whole toy? There's just no way. And I'm not going to even say it's a design flaw because I don't think it is. I think it is a production flaw that they just used cheaper plastics when they could have used stronger plastics. They used plastic when they probably should have used pins and metal, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's not the design, and it is a great looking toy. Don't get me wrong, love it. I won't transform it though.
No,
I just
I
I won't
don't
touch it.
blame you. Like to me, like some of the most like robust designed robots were, you know, some of them were combiners because the way they were designed, they could take the beating. You look at like, you know, I'm gonna bring GoBots into this because big GoBot fan here too. Dealing with like Puzzler and Monstrous. Puzzler, the only real weak part of him was um the police car's top part
The light
where
bar.
the little light bar.
Yep.
But if they would have replaced that plastic light bar with diecast, flawless. Like the
Maybe.
toy is pretty much
Maybe.
flawless at that point, you know?
Well, the problem with that one would be that if you replaced it with die cast, you'd have die cast going into the plastic holes on the top half,
That are
and
retained
over
by a
time,
metal bar.
those would wear out
Yeah.
over time. So the plastic on plastic, I get that. I honestly, the only problem I ever had with Puzzler, other than, sorry, but paint chipping, you guys suck at paint. Sorry. Is that light bar tends to get loose, but there's literally a screw right on top. that you can tighten it down.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you get it, to where it's not good enough, you back it out, put a little clear nail polish in there, put it back together, bam. And I mean, we're on the topic of Puzzler, so I'm gonna go ahead and go with it.
Yep.
You know, Puzzler and Monstrous. There you go.
Yeah.
How can you get any better than that? Oh, well, other than Satan Six.
I
I
mean, yeah,
mean,
other than Satan 6, but I mean, he's just a recolor of
he's
Monsters.
just a recolor, but he's a cool looking recolor.
He is. And with the design of just how those combine together, everything being integrated into the robots, having the master, like the large robot head built into the other robots, and the
Yeah.
hands being built in, was so beyond Transformers. Like, to me, I don't know why, other than, like, people complain about parts forming. And I hate when people complain about parts forming, because I'm like, technically, most of G1 is parts forming. People don't think about that.
I'm actually trying to think of any of them that are not.
And that's mini bots, only thing. Really. I mean, the only mini bot that
No.
had the thing was Outback. And that's a gun, you know? And you can't even put it in robot mode, so you can just leave it still attached on his back.
Oh, I thought you were talking about combiners in
Oh,
general.
no. I'm talking all
I'm,
across the
I'm,
board.
I get it, but I'm saying in combiners
Mm-hmm.
in the '80s, I can't think of one that wasn't a parts owner. Not one.
Nope.
And way back then, GoBots did. And you're like, and the neat thing they did, and it's very minor, but when I say it, you'll agree, is anytime that there was like it was supposed to have a fist, okay, in Transformers, the legs were always stuck together. They never separated. So what did GoBots do? Well, they just put the top two fingers in one foot and the bottom two fingers in the other.
Mm-hmm.
So that you could still separate him, stand him however you want. You put it together. When you pop the fist out, it's together. Beautiful.
Kind of like,
Simple.
the in Fall of Cybertron Bruticus, which a lot of people hate because he was so thin. There's nothing wrong with that toy. It was just a product of its time because of limitations of production. But
I
even the
I never
Fist
got
of
it.
Blastoff did that. That's the
Yeah.
only one I could think of that's ever done that. And you
I
think about,
had
what
that
was
one
it, the
all.
Energon ones didn't even do that either, because they had these parts you had to part form every
Yeah.
time.
I had that one, but I cannot remember. I know what you're talking about. But you know, everyone was just talking about the San Diego Comic Con version.
Well, hi, Dan. Oh,
He may or may not be on. Who knows?
yeah,
Who
I don't
knows
know.
what he's
Maybe he must be doing his own thing. He just popped in.
doing. Anyway, so you had the San Diego Comic Con one, and everyone was going nuts over it.
Hmm?
And at that time, I was all about buying and selling, buying and selling. That's just what I did. I had my store going and everything. So when one came across, I got it. All right. And when I got it, it had already been open. So I'm like, let me see if I can figure this thing out. And I got it, and yeah, it very shaky. The connections and everything just weren't, you know. Um, I had to look at the video game pictures to know what in the heck I was looking at because I'd never played the game.
Hmm?
Does it look like that? Yes. Is it aesthetically pleasing to me? Not really. But I didn't play the game. If you wanted the representation of the game, perfect. It looked like it. It had it. No problems.
And the fact that they reused that mold for the retail release,
Oh,
the
the G2.
Platinum release, the San Diego Comic Con release, then they had the G2,
Yep.
which was all Bruticus, and then they turned around and remolded some of the, or not, they remolded the faces, but redid the weapons to create Ruination.
I was going to say, didn't they do Ruination?
Yes, they
I
did.
thought.
So that mold had been used 5 times, and to be honest, I personally enjoyed what they did because I enjoyed like this was Cybertron aesthetic. This wasn't trying to be some, you know, crazy, oh, it's got to be G1 accurate kind of thing. No, the color wise maybe, but it was kind of their own thing, and I kind of like that about it because it kept it unique.
The whole Cybertron trilogy that they did, and that's wrong. It's not the Cybertron trilogy, but all the ones that they did based upon the robots in their modes from Cybertron, I found very interesting. I didn't really think much of it until I actually went back and researched what they were supposed to represent. And like I said, I had to look at the video game to even see what Prime looked like, Bumblebee and all that. And I'm like, these are pretty daggone good.
Yeah,
If that's the one that you wanted, that toy looks pretty daggone good.
and I know like in the aftermarket, it's still not a very expensive combiner. For those out there that
Some of
want
them
to get a
are.
combiner, yeah, it depends on which one, but I mean, really, the retail one you can get for roughly $100. Um,
Yeah,
if you're trying to get Ruination, you're probably gonna be hitting about 250 to
I was gonna
300
say I
because
thought
it's a lot
Ruination was
harder to
pretty
get.
expensive.
Yeah, it's the most expensive one. It's even more expensive than the San Diego Comic Con one because
I believe that.
it was slightly different than the Platinum edition. The only big difference between them, I think, was maybe the hue of paint was slightly different, but the big thing was the Platinum edition came with a Grimlock that was cartoon accurate colors with a chrome chest, which was weird.
I I know
But
on those San
cool.
Diego Comic Cons they like to do that chrome stuff, so they'll just throw chrome where it doesn't need to go or whatever,
Yeah.
and that's usually about the extent of it.
Well, that's the thing they did with Devastator when in during Combiner Wars. They
Yes,
did that version, which I thought was weird. I was like, why didn't you guys just do a yellow one? Like that would have made it so much better.
orange.
Or orange. Either one. Orange needs to be done. I don't know why they keep skipping that one. There's so many people that love the Orange Devastator, and it's just
Oh
I've
yeah,
kept my Orange Devastator. It's the only Devastator I kept because I had pretty much every one, like almost every knockoff of it too, you know. And I was just like, no, I'm just gonna keep the orange one. I even had the Diaclone one at one time. It was cool, but I was just like, I really like that orange. It's just something about that orange. But
yeah. Um, and I think it's in your head. It's definitely in mine because when I think of when I see them all together, and the yellow one's just like, yeah, that kind of looks good. Actually, you know what? From the vehicles I've seen in my lifetime, I've seen orange ones, or yellow ones. So the yellow one to me looked the most accurate. But I also know where the orange one came from. All right, I know what it was an exclusive
mm-hmm,
to a store I really liked. That's gone.
yep,
So
poor
then that nostalgia just kicks in,
poor
and
KB
I'm like,
Toys. I'm telling you.
that's the one I want. And then the collector part of me goes, well, it's also the most expensive. And then you're like, well, I definitely want it now. So I mean,
Well, it's that rarity, I think, that a lot of people really kind of chase with certain things. To me, the reason I kept that one out of all the Devastators I had is because I loved the colors. The colors is what sold it on me. But throughout the years of having this happen, and them never doing anything with Combiner Wars other than give us a green one, they're doing pretty much. I hope, I really hope, with the new one that they're not going to do that. But seeing how the new one actually works, because Toys R Us, again, yes, I am going to plug him. He actually got the pre-production copies to the Hook and Long Haul and combined the two together and showed how it actually works. And it's cool, but still, it's kind of, I don't know. It's just the way Long Haul like has so much hanging off the back. It's just kind of to me.
well, there was a. Did you see that meme that's running around where they showed when they showed the complete combiner of Devastator,
Mm-hmm.
and they spun it around, and you saw that big squared off junk in his trunk. Um, so then there was memes all over the place where they would take like G1s and then just like extend the butt out and make it, just to joke with them. And honestly, I'm going to throw that back to what I just said about Slingshot. It's a great looking toy. Don't look at the back.
Yep. He's nothing but wings, and it's like they just took the whole jet and just attached it to, like, let's split a jet in half and weld it to
Yeah.
the back of his legs, and here he goes.
Yes, I mean, it's all what you can live with, of course. You know,
What are we talking about here?
Combiners.
We're all over
Hey, how's it going, Protoman?
How you doing? I had a free moment, so I figured I'd drop in.
Yeah, it's just me and Megamus tonight. We're talking combiner robots and some of the new stuff that's hit. And
I love me a Megamus. How you doing, Brett?
I'm doing good. We got we just been kind of floating around with just combiners, and like, you know, there's some combiners I've had that Jason doesn't have, and vice versa. And you know, like we were going to get into even some of the vintage knockoffs and stuff like that. Just because, you know, these new ones that are coming out, they kind of are using what I would consider to be an old technology of combining, which is fine. And then you get into the whole parts former, what's not parts former, this, that, and the other. So we just kind of been just jumping back and forth. We bounced around a little bit.
Well, I feel in a lot of ways, I think that it's more just the pursuit of really trying to achieve that Fluoro Deary animation model design. And, you know, again, everything that Fluoro did back in the day, he did as a fantastical interpretation of those Diaclone and Microman designs. And just going like, well, how could we take what Fluoro did all those years ago and make them a reality in the 3D space where it could probably be impossible? And I think that that's how they came to the conclusion when they did Menasor with Legacy, and going like, well, if we do this skeletal structure thing, and you know, and especially, you know, like whoever did ultimately design that in the end was probably someone at Takara that worked within that brand when they were doing the old stuff, especially. I mean, while Yoke-san isn't there anymore, Kojin Ono's still there, you know, Hiradaki's still there, you know, Kuniharu-san is still there. So many of those guys are still there. So I'm pretty sure someone, you know, went, well, you know, you could kind of do it like XYZ here. And, you know, you continue seeing that with, of course, Superion, and then soon to be, obviously, we haven't seen the Bruticus skeleton yet, but will probably be the same thing based on art.
That's what I'm thinking too, because I still love my Devastator, you know, and it, to me, it wasn't really a parts former.
We're talking 85, right? 85 Devastator.
No. Combiner Wars.
Okay, Combiner Wars.
Okay, so you got Combiner Wars Devastator, and everyone's like, well, you know, these new ones are not as big as that, and you know, they're parts formers and everything. And I'm like, well, but the difference is Devastator was always different because
completely,
it wasn't a scramble city. So now they're making something that could possibly be a scramble city, and you can just, you know, Computron could go in there, you know, Bruticus, all that.
Well, all of those, I mean, obviously there's early prototype examples of maybe Superion was going to be a Diaclone item back then, and then of course it evolved into what would be the Scramble City concept. But I mean, yeah, of course, those old construction Diaclone stuff, that was always to be a standalone intended thing. Like anything from 84, 85, with a few rare exceptions. Like all of that is it's looking at Jazz that's a Porsche, and then looking at Cliff Jumper that's a Porsche, and trying to make sense of both of those existing in this
different companies too, though. That's the thing.
Well, yeah, of course, but that's what I'm trying. Well, maybe not so much. The Mysterions is definitely the brawls. Excuse me, the brawls, the bronze, the Huffers, but the penny racers themselves, if you want to call them that, the Cliff Jumpers, the Bumble Jumpers, the Bumpers, if you want to call it that, those ones did have Microman origins. But what I'm trying to get at is you have you have this kind of like early development of that is so completely divorced of what was made later on that it's almost just from two different worlds. You can't even compare. It's like, again, it's like looking at Jazz, the Autobot car from 84, that's based off of Porsche Turbo 911 from, if I want to say like 79, 80 when it was developed. And then you look at just literally 2 years after that, where you have Hot Rod 86, and it's like, it might just be two separate worlds, two separate toy lines. You know what I mean? You put Jazz next to Hot Rod or Cup or Blur, you're talking like two different, very separate worlds of development. But that being said, Kuniharu-san developed the Hot Rod, Kojin Ono developed the Jazz. They were both practically elbow to elbow in that same office in literally maybe a 2-year span. So it's something that when you look at what combiners have been just in that short span, it's almost like you can't put Devastator with the Scramble City flavor. And that goes into also stuff like the Piranacons. And of course, you mentioned, Computron and stuff like that. And then, of course, we have the next like evolution of that after the fact when we get into Monstructor. And then later on, of course, the Japanese G1 stuff like a Road Caesar, a Lio Kaiser, and I could go on and on. Anyways, you're going to say? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, the only thing I was going to say is that, you get, they see that evidently, this is the only thing I could think of. Anytime that they start a meeting about a new line coming out, they always say there's got to be an Optimus Prime. There has to be a Bumblebee.
We're talking today. Yeah.
Okay, today.
Yeah.
And then when they say, well, we got to do combiners. Well, there's got to be a Devastator. Do you know how many different variations of Devastator we've had?
Oh, of course. Well, and again, this falls into that. But that also falls into, you're getting into the legalese of why that happens now, which is now Hasbro, they always have this conversation every 4 years of what do we do with a trademark? And I mean, that goes all the way back.
8 years and you lose it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it goes all the way back to Creo, which is Creo. Like, people don't realize a lot of the existence of Creo was we need to get a lot of back of those trademarks, but we don't want to put the time and effort into engineering some of those characters in the first go. But how do we get all those trademarks back in one shot? And then we have 4 years to develop it. And that's where you had the Creo combiners. The Creo combiners all came out within a span of 6 months and registered and trademarked all of those past characters, and some that didn't make sense. Obsidian was thrown in there, and Air Razor, and a few others. Just
that was that also about the time. No, that was Commemorative series.
Like
they lost the name of Jazz.
Oh, a lot of those. That was Meister for a bit, and then Agent Jazz would reveal the shield. Yeah, like that. There's when you get into the deep legalese of trademarks and how that this completely dictates why toys exist. I just talked about it recently. I don't want to plug my own podcast, some weird show, but I talked about it on my own. I said the only reason why we're even getting Power Glide and Swerve next year is because their trademarks are both expiring next year. And it's like it's like
with Wind Charger, because Wind Charger's been leaked too.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. It's literally all you have to do is go, what was the last Western release under Hasbro's licensing of that trademark? And I don't say Transformers, I say Hasbro, because, oh, hey, how come we haven't gotten Outback in a while? Why? Because there was a G.I. Joe recently, so they find ways to move it around. We got to keep Sideswipe alive, but we don't want to do anything with Sideswipe. Oh, we're going to put it on a Joe character or something. They did that with Shockwave. The Roadblock is another one that shares it. But what I'm trying to get at is, it's something where you could predict these things just because of the trademarks. And when you get into combiners, which in general, I'm oversimplifying here, but in general, you're talking each individual combiner is 6 trademarks, 5 pieces plus the main unit itself, sometimes 6 when it's 7 when it's a 6 unit guy, but in general, it's 5. That's a lot of trademarks you have to tune up for. And yeah, some of them you're lucky. You get something like a Bruticus where a Swindle could be an animated character, a Brawl could be a movie toy, a Vortex you could probably stick somewhere too, and you could do it on a shallow, repaint. Blastoff is kind of the oddball. He hasn't really been used anywhere else in Transformers lore outside of that. But what I'm just trying to get at is, a Devastator, you're lucky in that you have Devastator, Maximus, or whatever he was called in the Energon import. I only know the Superlink names off by heart, but
that one.
So like you have stuff like that, you could throw it in. And then of course, you do the Devastator, then you wait for the 4 years, you refresh and you go G2 Devastator. Then you wait 4 years, you refresh, you go Shattered Glass Devastator. Like it's the easiest way to predict what Hasbro's doing. It was something that was taught to me by John Warden when I was doing copy with Combiner Wars. Like that was something I was doing quite actively back then, especially in 2015 and 2016 with Hasbro. And it was always like, look at the trademarks, look at the trademarks. What hasn't been done? And we're talking reissues. Like you go, oh, when was the last Power Glide? And you just go, huh? Well, they did that Power of the Primes one, and then they waited for that to expire, and then they waited 3 years, and now the trademark's about to expire in 2026. Oh, here we go, Power Glide. What a surprise, you know? And you could go on.
Before Power of the Primes, there was the Combiner Wars one that they used twice.
Yep, and again, twice, because
didn't they do a box set with Superior on what they meant it to?
How it works pretty much is they register the trademark, and then within those 4 years, they have to use it at least once. If they don't use it once, the U.S. Patent Office, and this is just to prevent monopolies and stuff like that, the U.S. Patent Office will take away the trademark from you and not allow you to reuse it or register it for 8 years. And during that time, other companies could go, well, maybe I feel like having Power Glide, you know, like so. And then that could screw Hasbro's plan for 8 years, which is a lifetime in that industry. So it's something.
The thing that got me. I mean, the thing that got me though is we're talking about trademarks and everything, and we were going to lead into it because one of the things that we were going to talk about is the legacy Minosaur, and that they got all the names, so all the names are correct. Yeah. But then they started doing the G2. And what you found was the first one they released was Shadow Stripe, which wasn't really a G2, but it looked just like a G2.
Oh,
why couldn't they just use the name?
I have two theories on that. Number one, Shadow Strip was that 2.5 Velocitron Speedia 500 collection that was dubiously going to be released. It kind of got a very soft release in a lot of ways, along with the what was the other one it came with? The Crasher, and then of course the big one that everyone was trying to hunt down, the Galaxy Shuttle. Yeah.
And also Cosmos, because Cosmos was.
Well, no, Cosmos was Wave 1 though. Cosmos was Wave 1.
Okay.
I'm saying wave. There was like a 2.5 that they put out. It showed up in Canada. That was kind of the thing. And it was like there was 2 deluxes with a bunch of filler. And those 2 deluxes was the Crasher and the Shadow Strip. And then you had like just in a standalone case of 2 of these Galaxy Shuttles that were like people were paying stupid money for at one point because it just had such a soft release. And I think that what happened with that was the Speedia 500 Wave 1 sold very poorly for Walmart. And then when they were going to do Wave 2, it's like, ooh, okay. If we just like put this out outright as this character, not a lot of people are going to be able to get this. They're not going to be able to complete their G2 team whenever we get around to completing it. So let's just give it a.
Do you think that they're going to do a drag strip G2?
I think and they're notoriously known for doing this. It's just going to get reissued again under the right name. That's all.
Well, this is a question though. If you look at that Shadow Strip, is his name? If you look at his deco actually isn't G2. There's no purple in it.
It suggests it.
The whole idea was it was like a mimic of it.
Yeah,
it suggested.
I don't understand why they didn't just do it. Like,
also
instead of doing a halfway, like.
If I took it, there's a possibility. I can't speak of it because I'm not looking directly at it, but there might also be a gang molding kind of situation where you look at, well, how many deco hits could you put on this? If you want to emulate 100% what Generation 2 did back in, would have done back in 95, would this could have been done emulating that is because the drag strip that we're getting
gold, purple, and blue.
But what I'm trying to say is like the drag strip that we got, like the G1 drag strip that we got, his color deco, and again, it's not too hard to deviate from it, but his color deco is trying to be more the animation model than it is trying to be the toy. So when that toy was designed and engineered, especially when you're planning where the mold and the colors of the plastic is going to settle and how it's going to be done on the frame, it was made with that intent to match the animation. When it then transfers over to being a G2 item, now you're looking at, we need to be toy accurate over animation accurate, because now, and again, because there's nothing to base on animation wise. So you're only basing it off of, test shots of a 1995 handful of test shots that are out there. So I get what you're trying to say, but again, this team, Nate, Evan, Mark, they're notoriously known for like, we'll just release it again, give it a slight deco change, and put it out there if need be. And they've been look, we're getting, reissues of Snarl from the leader class Dinobots. Like there's a lot of times where they recognize, oh, there's a demand for this item. It got a soft release XYZ here or there because it was in a later wave. And then they re-release it because, and I firmly believe this is going to be a lot of the future with Hasbro when it comes to their products. It's going to be a lot less, and I'm totally for it personally, a lot less newer products, a lot more focusing on putting more of the same products out. And this is something that's very similar to what Generation 1 did. You'd be in 1985 and you'd still have mini bots from 84 in case assortments. You'd still have Optimus Prime in case assortments. So it's something where I could see them like, hey, we're going to be in our future wave of whatever, but we're still going to be, I don't want to say reissuing, but repacking old product and giving it a second chance here and there, because they're going to be doing less waves. They're going to be doing less products. There's going to be a lot more PRs, which are package refreshes, which are new products into the assortments. So, I mean, I think it's just the reality. I think it's just the way that they're going to go with that. And I think that shadow strip was just them more, ooh, like this is going to get a very soft release only in a couple regions. Let's not freak people out and call it G2 drag strip. Let's just give it another trademark. We'll register that trademark. And to be fair, I don't even know if maybe there was another shadow strip before, like not in Transformers, but let's say in the greater Hasbro thing, where like maybe there was a My Little Pony named shadow strip. I don't know, because I will say this right now, working with Combiner Wars, that BotCon 2016 year where I did some of the bios for them, they needed to name a camera character, the golden ticket figure, the clear Flash Sentry. I named him, but I named him that only because they're like, we need you to use a trademark. We can't use new trademarks. Here's everything we have in our archive. Now, when I look at their archive, they don't say what it's tied to. They just say, this is what we have. I saw Flash Sentry and I'm like, hey, that's perfect for a camera. Flash Sentry, literally 6 months after I submit that and everything's said and done, I go to BotCon. A My Little Pony collector comes up to me with his trading card set. And he shows me, he was like, oh, hey, like, it's really cool that you named this character after a pony character. I was like, what are you talking about? And he showed me it was a My Little Pony character that I named it after. Had no idea. It was like some kind of like DJ character in My Little Pony. But that's just kind of how it happens. Like I did a post on my Twitter not too long ago showing like, oh, there was like a really obscure mid-90s Hasbro Kenner line. And if you look at all the trademarks of these weird characters, it was almost kind of like a fusion of Mask meets like G.I. Joe. It was a very weird, short-lived line. You look at all the trademarks and you see Night Stalker. You see, what was on that one? Hold on. I remember I posted, and it was like a lot of wacky stuff. One sec. It was Night Stalker. One sec. Oh, yeah. It was Sandstorm, Smokescreen, yep. Night Stalker, Stinger. What was another one? The whole name of the line was Shadow Striker. So it's like, it's wild. It's wild that like, and this was 1990 Hasbro Kenner. So like these trademarks, they float for years. Kenner gets the Police Academy license, and you go, oh, Police Academy, what does that have to do with anything? One day they register a trademark in 1992 called Long Arm, based off of Police Academy character. And then they keep that trademark. They put Long Arm on a Joe, and then they put Long Arm on a Minicon, and then they put Long Arm on an animated toy, and Long Arm has been kicking around all because of a Police Academy trademark. It's wild when you think about it, but that happens all the time.
This is a question I have. Because seeing how they do like all these like trademarks and such, with them doing what they have been doing with recolors, I'm looking at the whole G2 Minosaur set, and this goes to Megamus as well. Knowing what they did with the G2 Combiner Wars version, do you guys think they're going to completely change the deco on Motormaster? Because he really wasn't released hardly at all. Anybody's really seen notorious photos of this thing with its full deco on the trailer and everything. What do you guys think?
I have two answers. Number one, I could answer the G2 Combiner War stuff because I was working with the company freelance at the time for those specifically box sets. Like that whole Lio Kaiser set there, all the names, all those bios, that's all me. That was all me, all of that. So all of those box sets was during that dubious time when we were, are we going to have BotCon? Is BotCon going to be a thing? Is the fan club going to be a thing anymore? That's when, and you have to understand, stuff is developed 2 years in advance. So there was this huge like questionableness if BotCon was going to exist back in 2015. And, you know, part of my brain was back then, I was like, oh, it's all going to work out. Like BotCon's still going to exist for many years to come. And then in late 2015, they were talking about HasCon. And I was like, oh, that sounds weird. And we all know how that turned out. I was there day one.
PlatoCon.
I was there day one. And literally I turned to, like, not to deviate for a moment, I literally turned to my friends the Sunday morning and we're like, let's just go home. I was just like, it was the first time I ever left a convention early. I didn't even let it finish. I was just like, wow, what were they thinking? But the point is, you know, oh, it's a Royal Guard from Crystal Palace. I'm sorry, Gabriel. One of your people in the chat, I don't know anything about My Little Pony. I don't know anything. Again, I literally picked it at random based on a name. Based on a name. That's all it was. It was like, hey, that sounds great for a camera.
Okay,
Flash.
Since you already have a whole lot of insight, I want to know what Megamus thinks is going to do with this new Menasaur.
Go ahead.
And then I want to hear
Go
what
ahead.
you're going to say. Because
Go ahead.
I know you have a little more insight.
Oh yeah, I'm still doing this and that.
Oh yeah,
every so often.
know
So it's like that's why there's only so much I could talk about. That's why. So
that's fine. So
Yeah.
Megamus, what is your thoughts on the deco on this new Motomaster? What do you think it's going to be like?
Well, first of all, I apologize. The dogs keep barking, so I have to keep muting.
Hey, we
That's
like
cool.
We like our
Really
fur
loud.
babies. It's fine.
They're loud.
Yeah.
I just know what the original looked like. You know, I mean, I looked at it up close. I owned it for a number of years and all that. And if there are photos out there of it, they could really do it justice. Do I think it'll be like that? I'm hoping. But I also think that it's also their chance to kind of ad-lib a little, you know, take some, you know, chances and do something a little different. And it was really weird because if you've ever seen the deco of all 5 of them together, they look nothing alike. You know, there's no theme between all 5 of them. They're all just kind of different.
Yeah, they all kind of have their own thing. Like
to be fair,
one was like
to be fair,
one was like gears. The other one was like, I don't know, like a fireball.
But you know, you look at something like, you know, Bruticus, and while they all have like a camo deco thing going on, they all are wildly different primary colors. You know,
absolutely.
Only thing there was the purple camo itself.
And I want to feel, and it's just a conspiracy theory, this isn't fact, but I want to feel that a lot of that is a heavy influence from 1993 and Power Rangers taking over the world with primary colors.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I could see that. That was like the mainstay of the 90s was crazy colors.
Well, Power Rangers, again, like you always, like the thing with Aaron Archer always said this really great quote that always stayed with me is working in the toy industry is like working in the fashion industry, where something comes out and then it completely offsets everyone's way of thinking. And then that becomes the fashion for the next 2 to 3 years, whether it be like, oh, McFarlane comes out and starts doing these Spawn toys. And then all of a sudden every other toy company goes, well, maybe we should put 10 cents more into paint, you know, and be a little more screen accurate or something. So it's the same thing. You know, here's Bandai of America, which literally was doing nothing on the radar prior to 1993. And then they come out with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and just take over the effing world. If you lived it, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
and
it was just like the turtle craze.
Oh, it was, if anything, bigger. You know what I mean?
Bigger than the turtle craze, but yeah.
And to say that the toy industry in no shape or form took a step back and went, huh, maybe there's like, I mean, the best example that I always give is Beast Wars. You know what I mean? Like all you need to look at Beast Wars and say like Jurassic Park didn't influence you in any way, literally from the card back with the dinosaur eye in the window, or the fact that we even know what a velociraptor is today. So the toy industry is always very heavily influenced by whatever is the fashion, and I use air quotes here, the fashion of whatever is working at that very time. So something like very weird colors on a bunch of vehicles in 1995, when literally around the same time in 1995 you have like a Power Rangers Turbo, you know. So it's something that it's not too out of the question. And again, and especially also because like these guys that work in the industry, when they're developing stuff, they also know what's going on the other side of the pond. They hear what's happening with it's the same. It's again totally speculation, but I truly feel the Dinobots 1993 being multicolored, literally hitting the shelves at the same time that we have multicolored dinosaurs from Power Rangers, and just pure coincidence that the colors that the G2 Dinobots were just so happened to not be the colors of the Power Ranger ones. Like we didn't have a Slag that happened to be blue. We didn't have a Grimlock that happened to be the maroon red. You know, like it worked. Sorry?
That's marketing. Of course not.
So they knew what was happening on the inside even before the product was going to be released, and to make sure that there's no crosses with that. And the irony in the end is, who was in charge of bringing Power Rangers to America all those years ago? Brian Goldner, who ends up becoming the CEO a couple of years later for Hasbro. Brian effing Goldner. So I'm getting into the inside baseball here of it and the weeds, but it's like there's so many things when those decisions get made, it becomes so much more clear when you know like what's really going on. Yeah.
So I get it. So
yeah,
getting back to that question about Motormaster, do we think he's going to look like that? My first question is for the two of you. Do you really know what he looked like? It was only in prototype pre-production stage, but do you know what he looked like?
Well, I'm familiar with what he looks like from the test shots that have gotten out there, and then of course I don't think I've ever seen a carded interpretation, which would then have box art.
Yeah, I've never seen artwork, but like when he's in vehicle mode, what's along the sides, what's on the top?
I myself analyzed the crap out of those photos that I've seen online, and I actually made my own sticker sheet for my custom G2 Minosaur, and they have gears. It's like little gears, and it's kind of on the fade. Yeah, on the side, but it also says Motormaster on the side as well. On the top of the cab, there's a sticker that has kind of that fade situation, but there's a big Decepticon emblem. And I think those are the big, like, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was it really, other than the gears that went across the back of the trailer that kind of matched the side of the trailer stripe.
Daniel?
So, again, you have a cab that has a gang mold of a deep purple that then pretty much only on the factory, and we're talking 95 unreleased Motormaster. You have internals of light blues that are then used in certain areas, probably made out of POM plastic, because those are joints that are used for transformation. POM plastic is the unpaintable plastic that's used for joints and gears. And then you had that vibrant light blue that was used for the trailer, which then makes up a majority lavender. Yeah. And then like Plasticon said, after that's I'm going to assume tampos, if not stickers, probably stickers more than tampos, of that gear design. Now, and it's something where when you then look at the legacy one, some of that could be reinterpreted and redone with tampos if they have the budget for it. I mean, keep in mind, we'd be talking a commander class, so the budget is there.
I really hope they don't do stickers, because we already saw how stickers turned out. I don't think we'll ever see stickers ever again. No. I think that because
the last time we had stickers used in a major shape or form was, like you mentioned, the Power of the Primes foil stuff. That was when the Vietnam factories started dealing with stickers. And I think, if anything, that showed that the Vietnam factories are not made for stickers. Keep in mind, Transformers are made by a plastics company. And at the end of the day, if you want to simplify things, the Transformers toys made by Hasbro are made by a plastics company, Jetta Plastics in Vietnam. So it's something where they don't clearly have the experience and or the know-how to do any kind of paper, sticker transfer that seems to work well, but they do have perfectly fine tampograph and deco sheet stuff that seems to work out well. So
do you remember what the top of the trailer looked like?
it also had that giant gear, if I remember correctly, I'm going to assume a sticker. I've never handled one personally.
So first of all, yes, they were all stickers except for the G2 Transformers stamp. That was on there. That's the only tempo. Everything else was stickers. On the sides, yes, they had the it was like an orange with Motormaster written on it and all these gears and all that.
Yeah, some kind of reddish orange, if I remember, something like that.
This is where my point comes. So on the top, they had a really specific sticker. And I'm going to jump back to some of the other G2 bots. And if I'm not mistaken, there was one that had what looked like blood splattered all over the top of it.
You're referring to the G2 breakdown.
Yeah. And I thought that's super cool. And then there was two versions of Drag Strip. But the final one that I understand was a splash like blood, but in gold.
On the windshield.
And it was the windshield. And just to let you know, the very first one was a very, very kind of like the same blue that's around my logo right now. That color blue. That's what the windshield looked like.
That's actually the one I copied when I made my my
that wasn't the final
system.
One. Yeah, the final one was actually the gold. Yeah, it was a gold splatter, which looks very much like Shadow Strike, but that's for something else. You had all this, so you're like this splatter, the blood, the whatever, and then you had Motormaster, and on the top of his, if you first looked at it, you would have been, wow, it looks like a blood. It's not really a splatter because they're really round.
Like speckled.
No, it's round. It's like someone dropped a paint can and it just went bloop and just kind of landed on it. But the problem is it wasn't red. It was that reddish orange. So I swear to you, when I first saw it, it looked like that someone had just taken paint and just splashed him like, how dare you wear fur or whatever, and splashed him. You know what I mean? It was the weirdest thing. So that's what I'm talking about. There was liberties that were taken that were different and everything. And how would they do that today?
Well, you already
don't know. You could change it, and no one would bat an eye.
Yeah, well, it's something that you already look at how they've handled some of the other ones and how they have to, like Dead End being the best example through the Toxitron collection, where it's like, well, there's only so much we could do where you transfer one to the other. You look at Dead End, how he looks in vehicle mode, and they pretty much get everything down pretty correctly from the original in terms of like where the certain decos were there and the way the front of the hood was. But once you get to the robot mode, you right away see you have to make a compromise because that Dead End is meant to be the animation model, not the original Dead End G2 toy. And so there obviously has to be compromises where how does the plastic settle? And when I mean settle, meaning where those colors are on the mold in the factory. And then we're talking a deluxe class. What is the budget for a G2 deluxe for the Toxitron collection? How much deco hits could we do here? Because again, when you're talking something as colorful as a Generation 2 design, there's only so many deco hits you could do to really homage that. So you don't have that peg head chest that would have normally ran down the center, so they didn't put the deco for that. When you comparing the robot modes, you right away see discrepancies. but again,
Sure.
primarily because that mold from the get-go had a very different goal. And it's something that, they did that box set of Menasor afterwards in Legacy, which tries to be toy accurate in terms of deco and stuff. But because that's a box set, that means that it has a bigger budget. That means they could put more paint onto it to give the faux look of toy accuracy. And there was a brand new head sculpt there used for the G2. Not the G2 breakdown, the regular breakdown, which I'm almost pretty sure, and this is just a prediction, I'm pretty sure the head sculpt used for that breakdown in the box set is going to be used for the G2 one. Mark my words.
I hope that this.
I think they will.
Are they going to do a box set of them?
I don't think it's going to be a box set. I think because I feel that what's going to happen is at some point there's going to be a Gen Selects Motormaster G2. I feel that's because
what I'm worried about. I could see them doing all the limbs, and then, hey, in order to complete it, you got to do this. And I don't really care for that. But there was one thing I did notice. You were talking about the pegs, which, if anyone hasn't ever handled or worked with the G1s, basically the head and most of the chest folded down, and that was the peg that you plugged in.
Yep.
And it was all one color.
Yep.
So I had just gotten, Daniel, you missed that. I had just picked up the new slingshot and
the new aerial bots, essentially the first two.
The two new ones, and they have that. They have that incorporated and painted and everything. So they are definitely homaging. They don't work that way anymore, but they still look the same. And so you could still do that.
You could, but here's the thing, just to cut in. The thing is that those Fluoro Deary animation models of the aerial bots, he was pulling from the toys. Like if you go back and you look at Air Raid and you look at Slingshot, you see that the white runs through his chest. It was really because, and this is the problem of going back to designs that were never intended to, like, you look at, it's the same thing like looking at the old GoBot animation models and looking at the GoBot toys that are based off of Machine Robo, where you're seeing something so vastly different than what the final product toy was, something like a Psykill and his face sculpt, or even a Leader 1 with his like yellow teeth and eyeballs. It's something where there was never an intention for that. And now we're having this weird thing where, okay, now we're going to do a toy that's going to be screen accurate, and thus we do that. But then we do it screen accurate and we mold it screen accurate. And then it's like, now we're going to make it look like the toy again, because the only thing we could base it on, if we're doing G2, slavish G2 stuff, the only thing you're able to pull from is the toy. But the toy is the toy. And the toy is that sculpt of the toy. So you're within the limitations of that. And sure, the aerial bots, it works out, because when Fluoro Deary did those animation models, he was staying more loyal to that. And you see that a lot more. I mean, the best example I always give people is look at Sideswipe and how his animation model was. Look at Red Alert and how his animation model was. One was his own interpretation, and one was toy accurate. Even though they're both repaints of each other's, they have two very different animation models, because as the show progressed, I think he was maybe told, again, this is all speculation, but I think he was told from the higher ups, try to make it look more like the toy, because look at stuff like in the early stuff between Ironhides and a whole bunch of other characters. The fact that, like I still to this day think that the only reason why Bumblebee has the head sculpt he has is because someone got a yellow cliff jumper and just assumed that was Bumblebee's head sculpt, and that's how we end up with the head that we have today. Because if you look at, toy Bumblebee, that's not the right head sculpt, so.
Well, yeah, which is very funny, because what happened in the first movie? He had the face shield.
Oh well, yeah, that's an evolution of storytelling where it's just like that goes all the way back.
Yeah.
That goes all the way back to the Dreamwave comic books, where the Dreamwave comic books would always have like different interpretations of, oh well, the toy had a mask on it, and the show model it didn't. So here's a good way to explain away what that mask is. And so you had characters like Bumblebee and others like, again, going to like the best example being, oh, there's a white Optimus under that Ultra Magnus armor. Dreamwave was always known for kind of looking at the toys and going, how do we explain this? And again, Dreamwave was very instrumental in the success of that comic book leading to them even deciding to do movies, so that was definitely a big selling point, because at that time when Dreamwave's books were coming out back in 2002 and 2003, that was the exact same time when we were coming right off of an extremely successful Spider-Man movie, and before that, an extremely successful X-Men movie, and making Hollywood go, oh, maybe we can base franchises off of comic books, and they do well. So but that's again, we're getting off on a tangent here, but that's kind of the facts of why that stuff happens.
So one of the things I wanted to, because we're going over.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
It just happens. So one of the things I wanted to say is we were talking about parts formers and combiners, and like for me, some of my favorite ones are 100% part formers. You can go all the way back to the early 80s with the first, combiners, this, that, and the other. They always had parts, this, that, and the other. But then you can, for me, like some of my favorite ones were like, 4-star Mr. Hardhat, or the Remco. And if you've ever seen these, and some haven't, they are literally just bits that create a skeleton that the robots connect to form the combiner.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well,
when I see those, because I actually haven't had any of those in hand. I've had some of the Zybots and such that all combine together to make them, but I've never actually had the structure itself. What I relate it to is the Micromaster combiners that they had, where the bits turned into a jet or whatever, but they just plugged on. And I never really had an issue with that, as long as you could do something with the extra parts. That's one reason why I love Generation 1 stuff and G2 stuff, is the fact that those combiners, you could take the bits and pieces and...
but you really had to... Yeah, but you really had to broaden your horizon on some of the stuff they did.
Yeah.
Okay? Let me ask you this. If you had a G1 Superior that was 100% complete, does he really need a shield? He's got one.
AKA the landing strip?
It just turns into a ramp.
It's because it's a ramp. So they can incorporate that third mold. Why does Motormaster have a roller? It's not roller, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he needed a chest piece to fill out the chest.
Well, that again, that goes into something that was much more heavily marketed on the Japanese side of things with Scramble City, where it's like, connect it to the bigger play sets, let it be an extension of the city modes, because again, it's Motormaster turns into some kind of, I guess we'll call it a launching for the vehicle that we'll call it the not roller
of the Diaclone stuff, because like you were saying.
Well, those weren't Diaclone.
The only one that was in early development.
They had springs, and the specific reason for that is to launch them, like he said.
Yeah, the only one that was in early development was Superion. Like there's early stuff of Superion.
Was too, because I thought I saw a couple.
I've never seen that. No.
I've never seen ever any. It's only Superion in a very funky head sculpt and stuff that's very different from the final product. I've never seen any others. None of the other guys. I think Superion was the only one. And again, that's like early stuff that never got made ultimately in the end. Probably only handmade prototypes for photography. And then by that time, by all of that stuff rolling around, that was the end of the Car Robots combined line. And then we go into Super Fight Lifeform Transformers in 1985 in Japan. So it's like there was a transition there that happened.
The photo I'm trying to find, because I believe it was Space Bridge that actually had it a long time ago.
I'd love to see it.
I'm trying.
Well, I know he had a picture of Superion,
but it was Metroplex put into his base mode, and they had looked like pre-production versions of Superion and bits of Minosaur that were on
Superion. I could see, but not the Minosaur.
Actually, the decals were completely different, like completely different. But I don't know if it was Because I've
Well,
seen
also
this, and I'm trying to
remember-
remember where I saw
Well,
it.
I'll post.
also
I'll
remember
post.
that they
I'm gonna
do
post
hand-cut
in.
stickers.
I'm just gonna post in the Discord chat here just for you. So this is the reference for the Superion that I was referring to. And again, this was 19 I want to say 83, 84 when, hey, we're going to do this, and then ultimately none of it ever happens, because then of course Transformers is popping off in America, and they're just going to do that transition to do that instead with the whole line, because at the end, Diaclone and Microman only had a few at best manga stories, and then story pages in catalogs explaining the story of whatever was going on there. So there was way more stuff they could do with those molds in terms of storytelling, and Japan is the kings of that. So of like the beautiful cohesion of product, storytelling, timing of shelf space and stuff, where Diaclone and Microman just had none of that, in a world where they had a ton of super robot stuff that was doing that stuff very successfully, the real robot stuff with Gundam and Macross and everything. And if you want even...
But one of the things I think he's talking about is if you talk about early concepts and everything, and you look at sticker placement and all that stuff, I mean, it was handmade stickers for a concept that may or may not have, come to fruition. So
Possibility.
You can't really look at an item and say, well, that's definitely got to be the Stunticons, because those stickers, those tempos and everything look just like that. No, it could have just been what they had at the time or what they thought about that they either carried over to that line or that they used from that line that they were already in development with.
So I found out, I was just going through my archives, I found an early example of what might have been a Menasor in development through Diaclone. And I'm just translating the Japanese right now because it's from a Japanese art book from Generations back in, gosh, I want to say like 2011. And I mean, the only thing I could say about it is it looks exactly like Menasor, unfortunately. I'm just translating the Japanese here, and then I'll post it in the chat here. But just translating.
Hey, Jason, can you screenshot those pictures?
I am trying to locate them because I've got my
I just people listening to see what
honest, if
what
I
we're
can't
talking
find
about.
them on here right now, they're probably on my server, because my server machine has everything on it. So I'm trying to find it.
I just put the Menasor on the Discord chat here if you want. So that's all I got. That's all I got that I looked through my archives here.
Yeah, pull that and screen share that.
Let's see here.
Yeah. So this and the Japanese that's written under it, which this came from Generations 2011 magazine. It says here, let me just translate it. So it says many Scramble City Combiner robots were actually in development as part of a free combiner idea, which would later on become Scramble City. This is a prototype of what would have been a Diaclone Menasor, which looks exactly like the Motormaster that we ended up getting ultimately in the end. So there you go. So there you go. So I guess at some point, I guess Menasor was also in the early development, but he looks a spitting image of what the final product was, more or less.
I might have found the folder. I just gotta give it a few minutes here to load because there's so much on it. Like I've got such an archive of photos of everything.
I'm just wanting it to get out there so we can see it, because I can't see what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the where you shared it.
It's in the general chat of text chat of your Discord.
Oh, okay. No, there it was. Okay, yeah, I've seen these before. I don't know if you guys have seen
that's
or not.
Share that. Let me see what you're talking about here.
That's all I'm familiar with. Like that's about as far as it goes for, and that's like super.
It didn't have a Superion head. It had no actual feet plates. By the way, you can do that with a G1 Superion. If you take the feet plates off, it will stand up just fine like that.
Oh yeah. These ones were, when these were being shown, it was especially like the Superion with that art there was around the same time. Not a lot of people are familiar with this, but there was a second color wave of Raiden back in the day. Mm-hmm. And a lot of like, it was like literally that's like the end of Diaclone. Like it's that
transparent colors for like the center.
Some of them. There was like a Dr. Yellow, which is in Japanese culture. Like there's a Shikaisen that's like a yellow called Dr. Yellow. So they did a Dr. Yellow color for, I want to say it was, gosh, what's it, Yukikaze, which was the same one. I'm trying to remember which one it was. But yeah, I mean, this was all like super late Diaclone stuff before Diaclone pretty much like, okay, we're done here. We're just doing, super fight life form transformers from now on. And that'll be it. And it worked out for them in the end,
Right.
Definitely worked out for them in the end, but.
I'm not finding this silly thing. It's probably on my other computer.
Yeah.
So
the big thing is that
I will post it. I will send it to you guys and show you exactly what I'm talking about because I know I'm
perfect
in my mind.
so some of the things we're talking about, is expectations of what's going on. Like I said, we've gotten 2 of the Constructicons already, and we already saw the final thing for that. We've gotten 2 of the aerial bots. We see what that's going to look like, and I personally like the fact that they use the same framework as Minosaur, because like we were talking about before, you can do the where you could swap out the limbs and all that. And Daniel brought up a good point about Minosaur, the G2 colored Minosaur. I could absolutely see them doing that as a pulse or a subscription or whatever, because they're leaking these out and they already got you tied. So you kind of have to.
Well, see, this is my thing. Out of the leaks that I've seen, where's my Liege Maximo?
He's going to come later.
And I hope the guy's not going to be a Titan, because
one thing I want to stress with the lists that leaked out, if you actually count how many deluxes, how many Voyagers, you only have 2.5 waves there. So there's still plenty of slots left for product. It's just that this list that we're looking at is early 2026. It's not all of 2026. Okay. And then that doesn't factor in, and this is very important, Generation Selects, Amazon exclusives, San Diego Comic-Con exclusives, a capsule for maybe Target and or Walmart. Like there's all of those too lead to more product. Now, granted, everything I just said of those capsules, those could all be straight up repaints, which is where exactly something like a Menosaur would be. A Motormaster, but that's where some of those could find their places. I think a Liege Maximo, though, it's 2 things. Number one, no rush to do it because it's not like there's a trademark looming that they need to get done. But at the same time, he will happen. Him and it's the same thing. We don't have a listing for Swindle yet for Bruticus. We have listings for all the other limbs except him. So but no one's saying, oh, we're not getting a complete Bruticus. No, of course we will. It's just, we're only like 2.5 waves of product that's being shown to us. Stuff is missing. Stuff gets moved around too. Like that Sure Shot listing, by the way, that thing's been kicking around since Kingdom, and then it keeps getting moved around. So you have stuff like that too, where it's like, oh, it's called Sure Shot, and then you look at the product code, and it ends up being like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a silly example here, but I don't know, like just Rat Trap or something. Actually, that wouldn't make sense because that's a core to a deluxe, but you know what I mean? You know what I mean, though? Like it ends up being another character, and it just, for whatever reason, the read up would have been that. And it's whatever that character was, I'd have to go into the archives and find out the product code. If you would have found that UPC code, and you could literally probably do it right now, find whatever that character was, take a high-res photo of that UPC code, walk into your Walmart and scan it on the Walmart computer, and assuming that it's still in their UPC archive, it'll probably say Sure Shot. Like it's just how it is, and it never changes. It's just, for whatever, and that's how we find out about these leaks, because these are just retail computer UPC scans, and that's why it has the product code and everything. But at the end of the day, sometimes those UPC scans don't match what ultimately the product is in the end. It's sometimes it's like, and Sure Shot was one of those, like, oh, it's Sure Shot, and then it became whoever it was. I want to say Cheetor. I want to say it's somebody. I don't know who it was in the end from Kingdom, but it's just, it got moved along. And then it ended up just now we're at this point, and we're going to assume that everything here is 100% what we're going to be getting in the future. We don't know. It's still a long whiles to go, but we'll see. We will see at the end of the day.
Well, it's like I said,
True.
to me, I'm just wondering, do you think, well, what size class do you think Liege Maximo would be then?
Leader.
Or leader?
The problem is there's only so many slots for a commander class, but leaders are like voyagers. You could have 2 per case, so you could have, meaning like you could have 2 characters, 2 per case. Actually, right now, unfortunately, voyagers right now, which I hate this, but voyagers right now come 3 per case, meaning you get 2 of one character and 1 of the other. So if anyone who's right now on the hunt at Walmart and you're seeing a lot of red alerts and not a lot of primas 1 per case, red alert is 2. So he's the short packed one, if you want to even use that term for something that's 3 figures in a case, but he's the short packed one. So that's kind of what's going on right now. But it's the same thing with leader classes. Leader classes are 2 per case. It's 2 characters in a case. So there's a lot more opportunities for that wave to wave. Like if you have 3 waves, that means it's 6 different characters potentially you could do if there's no refreshes. Where commanders, it's just 1. You just got the 1. And we know what that commander is going to be this year. So there's no surprises with that. It's going to be Onslaught. So leader's a lot more realistic. I mean, yeah, it'd be cool if he was a commander, or even a Titan class. Oh my God, it's the old G2 final page Titan class, looming over everybody.
I mean,
But
he does turn into a starship.
but at the same time, and if we're basing it off of, and historically it looks like that's the case. If you look at the statues of the primes, those gold statues, so far they've been pretty accurate to what the product is. So if you look at that statue of Liege Maximo, it looks like his G2, what's his name? Gregoff Sr. Like interpretation. So it's like, I think that's what we're going to get. I'm predicting a leader class. I could be wrong, but ideally in my mind, that's where I could see it. Him as a deluxe would be silly, especially that design. If it was his, that Loki looking one that we saw through the Covenant of Primus, okay, you could get away with that as a deluxe or whatever.
I don't. I hate that design so much.
I know it's very unoriginal. It's very clearly everyone was enjoying Avengers movies and Tom Hiddleston at that point. So and again, that's very. I use the term creative bankruptcy, where it's like, here's something that's really great that was done back in 94, 95. That was fresh and original, that wasn't like aping off of something else, unless Simon's not telling us something. But at the end of the day, that I would appreciate more. And judging off of those statues in the box art, that's what it looks like it's going to be. So I'm very happy to say that. And if that's the case, I would want a leader. I think something that's big and hulking would just be cool. Something that stands above the primas that are the voyagers and the solaces that are the deluxes, where you could have Megatronus, the strongest of the primes. That makes sense. He could be a leader. He's big. And then you could have the same thing with Liege Maximo, and that works out too. So, I mean, that's and then same thing, the whole Onyx Prime and him being like a beast and everything with the multiple legs. You have to have that leader class just for the budget of the plastic amount that's needed to have the Centaur mode and all the weapons and the triptych blade and all the cool stuff that comes with that. So that's cool. So I would imagine him being a leader.
This is a question for both of you guys. Since we're getting Star Convoy, do you think they're going to end up doing a Super Megatron that's better than that retool?
That's a big rumor that a lot of people have been having, but at the same time, companion pieces don't always happen right away. We got a Commander class Magmatron, and if we were in that same state of mind, that means big convoys coming up in Legacy United, and big convoys only coming up now, So it's something where, we'll probably get a Super Megatron at some point, for sure. I mean, once again, all we have to do is go, okay, what is a mold that could kind of work to do that? And there's plenty of molds that we're sometimes not thinking about that kind of has that Super Megatron kind of like Galvatron, or like a Shockwave kind of blaster ship kind of thing.
Maybe
sometimes we're not.
Like they've used that Fallen mold. I can see them somehow
Totally.
putting wings on that.
Well,
thing.
and not to mention they do a lot of partial tooling now too. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the best example that I always give is like there's this great photo that they showed that before they settled on the Cosmos that we ended up getting, they were going to do like a heavy partial of the Bumblebee origin, and it showed just how far they're willing to go sometimes with some of these in terms of like almost reinventing the wheel completely and only using some of the parts. So it's something that I could see them either doing something from the ground up completely and making that a leader class, or I don't want to say commander because that's a little tough, but I could see it as like a. And again, that Takara Generations one that they did there, the Legend scale, excuse me, the LX is a fantastic figure, but I could see them also revisiting and doing something good again. Because look, they also did a Star Convoy back then, you know. So if they're
I don't know. It's one of those things I've really been kind of like wondering. Do you really think they're gonna do that? Because they've been really good about making sure they finish teams.
I will tell you why 100%. It's a Megatron.
Yeah.
That's right away. That's all you need to hear. In a time when they don't want to take risks as much anymore, toy sales are down, things are shrinking. You got to go with stuff that you know is a guarantee. And you know, if you told me, which do you think, Botanica or Super Megatron? Which do you think? Let's say Transmutate or Super Megatron. Like they're gonna a Megatron is just gonna be a shoe-in.
I mean,
and it's something
like they renamed Star Convoy. You know,
and it's something.
Prime.
Well, yeah. Well, there you go. We're gonna do a Titan. And think about how badly Titan classes have been selling over the past couple of years. So they went cheaper, not $200, back to $150 MSRP, and they went with an Optimus Prime character and a little Hot Rod if you want to give him the rub, but mostly because of the Optimus Prime, you know. So it's something where they went safe. They went safe. It's an Optimus Prime at a $150 price point, you know, where some people.
I think they got their tail swatted with the last ones that they did.
The last few did not sell well. They ended up in clearance. It's, I mean, if you would have told me, hey, we're going to do the Arc and we are going to struggle as hell to find someone to buy it, and the Arc would get like discounted multiple times, I wouldn't have believed you. But yet here we are.
Okay.
You know?
Speaking of the Arc, speaking of the Nemesis, in your opinion, I want to hear this from both of you guys. Do you guys think it would have sold better if they were sold more as a playset that did not transform into a robot? But
no, because then
into maybe some other something.
I hate to cut in, but it's like you're adding a toyetic mentality to a line that's primarily bought by collectors, and you combine the fact where people just keep in mind it was Kingdom. It was 1 year into, I don't know if you guys could say I'm going to say what I use on the podcast, the Big V, just because sometimes YouTube is weird like that.
Big V.
I use Big V. Yeah, me and Aaron Archer, we both use Big V on our podcast. Like it's the safe bet. But so like we were 1 year into the Big V.
I just say that.
Yeah. So we were 1 year into it, and some people didn't have the finances. You know, it was a weird time. It's the same thing. It's why Scorponok is worth so much today. A lot of people didn't have the money. You know, it was, oh my God, it's the end of the world, toilet paper, and here's Scorponok and Skybite and Skylinks that are the big ticket items on the shelves, and people are going like, ooh, am I going to spend money on this giant scorpion, or am I going to spend money on a generator, you know, or food, you know, because we don't know what the world's going to bring, because the media is blowing smoke up our butt and making us believe it's the end of the world. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing, that it was the ancillary effect that also happened to the Arc, where even if you made it a play set, that's right away saying, well, because the kids would have wanted a play set, or the core classes would have worked with this as a play set. I don't think that would have made a difference. I really don't. I think that it's just the frame of mind, the spending habits of the current Transformer fans, and again, what was going on in the world at that exact moment didn't help. And then the reaction by Hasbro, and I could confirm this from Mark, is that after how poorly the Arc sold, Tell me if you even saw the Nemesis in a store.
No, never did.
Exactly.
From what I heard,
They
it
made
was
it.
straight to Ollie's.
They made it almost completely online exclusive, and like you said, afterwards, because it was online exclusives and it was in distributor factories and it was in storage facilities, it then ended up in the clearance stuff after the fact. Because again, I think that's when we hit 100. I have to look it up. I think that's when we hit 200 MSRP, or was that Tidal Wave? I'm not sure which one was the one where we hit
I
200.
think it was that
So, wait a minute.
one. Because I don't.
Yeah.
think
One of the things I wanted to point out is, first of all, I agree with Daniel. They didn't do well. We know this, but also,
and I'm not saying they're bad products. I'm just stating the facts of
but I'm
like
also saying collectability.
Yeah.
Okay, if you look at any Transformer fan collection, and you ask them how many primes you have, how many Megatrons, how many this, how many that, how many bots do you have in general, how many play sets do you have?
Of course not. Yeah. Unless you're a
Okay.
psycho like me. But yeah.
Right.
Hey,
So
I make my
then
own
you
play
say,
sets,
well,
so I
what do you
love 'em.
collect? Well, I collect characters. Well, I'm sorry, but they weren't characters. They were ships.
Yeah.
They
I agree
don't
with
carry the same creed.
I
So
mean, think of this.
that ties into it also. And then, of course, the worst part is because of what happened during that time period.
Yeah, a big factor was it's the sticker shock. It's something where, especially by the time the Nemesis came around, and then it's like, you think about it this way. You're someone, like, let's say you're a hardcore fan like me. You bought the Arc full price, MSRP, day one. I am hyped. Here we go. Let's do this. The Arc finally. And then boom, it's going as low as $50. And, it's like,
Yeah.
oh boy,
Well, let me ask you something.
And then here comes the Nemesis at $200. And again, we're not completely recovered yet from what's going on in the world. Are you going to buy it day one? No. What does that do to the population in the secondary market afterwards? So it was a rough one.
Down the toilet.
So wait a minute. Let me say something else. So
Go ahead.
this was done once before. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Where they produced a ship, and it was with a figure.
Mm-hmm.
And the figure was basically the same, but it outsold. Why? Because they wanted the ship. Okay? Talking about Beast Wars here. Okay?
Yeah.
So, there were people that wanted it. Okay? I want that representation. Did it transform? No. Why? Because the ship never transformed in the show. Okay. Why do I want to pay $200 just because you made it turn into a robot that you're pigeonholing into a character? So I'll pay you $200. So I think there was some stigma there also.
It's the unfortunate fact of just how it is. Like if you're going to do a mainline product, you got to somehow give an excuse of, well, what's the gimmick? It transforms. If in the perfect world where the Transformers RED line doesn't go belly up and sell poorly, which was the one where the untransformable, like Marvel Legend scale kind of figures of Transformers.
Right.
In the perfect world where that doesn't die, yeah, we're in like wave 7 and we're getting a play set of the Arc,
Exactly.
But
Let me ask you this. What was the last Titan figure that blew it out of the park?
That sold well?
Great. Phenomenally. Like they should have made more.
I'd say
so let's just do it. I'm just turning my head. So quick history lesson. So not counting when they were temporarily San Diego Comic-Con exclusives, that's its own little run.
No
But Metroplex went on clearance at Costco. I remember that.
Yes.
After Metroplex was Constructicons, I have evidence of that going on Costco. So I remember posting that on Twitter, like literally pallets of that. Fortress Maximus, did that go on clearance? I don't remember.
Yes.
I think it
did. He? Okay.
Because a lot of people didn't like the base mode. They hated it.
Okay. So, and here's the one where it's like, and this is where it's like, oh boy, what happened with that one? What happened with Predaking? Because I saw that never in retail. But maybe that was just me as a dumb Canadian. But like, Predaking was a weird one where I never saw it in retail. I ended up having to buy it online. And then I know that Omega Supreme, actually, we're skipping Triptychon. Triptychon, we all know, especially Brett. They all went on. That was the Ollie's day.
I bought crap loads.
Yeah, you got a tower of those at TFCon. So that definitely went on ridiculous clearance. What was that, 15 at its lowest at some point?
That's because of the hip issue, wasn't it?
No one's thinking like that. It was a big, expensive dinosaur that no one bought. That's you don't have, hundreds of people dialed in around the world knowing about the hip issues. You don't buy it, you don't buy it. That's just it. And then after that, then we get into like the Siege stuff and everything with like Omega Supreme, which I remember going on micro clearance a little bit, at least locally here. I don't know about on the world view. And then by then, now we're talking Scorponok, and we're in a whole different world at that point, because then Scorponok and all the others. But I know Scorponok, it's not that he didn't sell well. It's just he was smack dab when stores were closed. So yes. He wasn't as readily available. You had to buy him from Amazon. People were complaining how Amazon was literally slapping their shipping sticker on the side of the box and just shipping it to you like that, literally. Yeah. I remember that being a whole nightmare. And then, of course, we get into the Ark. The Ark sold very poorly. Then after the Ark was the Nemesis. That sold poorly. Let's not even talk about Cybertron Metroplex. That sold poorly. So it's like you have just one after another of these guys that were just selling so poorly that it makes them scared. And that's why ultimately in the end, Star Optimus Prime became a smaller price point, and they went in that direction. And what's crazy is I've seen people already compare photos. You look at that first Commander class we ever got, the Jetfire. I don't know if any of you have that one. That Jetfire, the Jetfire comes with as much parts and pieces and as size as the Star Optimus Prime. Mm-hmm. So what's happening is the early Commanders are what are our modern Titans today. At least this one here with the 150 Star Optimus.
So the reason I asked that is because in my feeling is, other than the fact that during one period in time when no one could afford these, no Titan has ever performed well. None of them.
It's a tough item. This was an item that when kids were part of the demographic, that was a birthday item, that was a Christmas item. It was the term is within the toy industry, it was a Christmas item. It was that big.
I mean, it was that. Ask yourself in G.I. Joe, if you could pick two vehicles.
Of course, you go to the Defiant, you go to the USS Flag. Yeah, you have or what was the mobile command playset? You know,
you hit the two on the head.
Yeah,
the Defiant and the Flag. Why? They were the two highest price points, and
totally.
Back then, that's a lot of money.
It's a Christmas item.
How much was the Flag back then? Was it like $80?
It was over $100.
I know it was over $100, which was insane for a toy.
If I remember, the Defiant was right around 90 to 100, and the Flag was like 100 to 150. Somewhere in there,
yeah.
And for the math, I mean that's a lot of money.
Now, don't correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't Omega Supreme only like maybe $25-$30 back in the 80s?
The most expensive when you get into G1? These I know because I literally just a few days ago talked about Transformer price points because of all the tariff drama.
Right.
How it goes essentially, Optimus was the most expensive price point at $39.99 back then. Then when we get into 85, you go into Jetfire. And Jetfire was $39.99. Then you go into Metroplex and Trypticon. Trypticon was only $5 more at $44.99, $45. I see, again, conflicting information with Fortress Maximus. Some people tell me $100, some people don't. No. The problem is I have catalogs here, like physical catalogs here of consumers distributing, which I don't know if you guys had that in the States, but we had them here in Canada, and those are Canadian numbers. So I can't use those as an example because especially we're talking.
Correctly, I'd have to look at my boxes too, but I'm pretty sure I saw about $50.
And so I have right now that like I literally just pulled out my consumers distributing stuff. So USS Flag, keep in mind, Canadian during the Reagan administration. So USS Flag in Canada, 140.
Yeah.
So
Well,
let's
that's
right
in
around
US
$100.
dollars then.
yeah, that would be like 100. Yeah, if it was Reagan administration, what year was that? That would have to be 87. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mid 80s. Yes.
Let's say 86. Yeah, I would have to say like $100 probably. You know,
Yeah,
let's
I know the Flag was the most expensive one, but I can't remember if it was the most expensive one before the Defiant came out or since. Because those two were the big ones.
Defiant, I do not know, unfortunately, because I don't have any catalogs. I don't have catalogs from that year, but that's another.
I had a box one with a sticker on it, but I sold it. Sorry.
I have a lot of catalogs here, but nothing from from that big. Yeah, the Defiant in the box. It's like, do you want that or a washing machine box? You know, it's like anyone who has the HasLab Unicron. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
you know?
no one understands. No one, because I've had them both boxed, and you would say, "Oh, the Flag, it's 7 foot long. That box must be huge." No,
that one you had to build.
No, it's
Defiant
big, but
was
it's
huge.
Not thick. It's not a huge,
the
thick
Defiant
box.
was
it's
huge.
Just like a huge rectangle. I'd say the Flag is, because I know the shop has one in box.
Yeah, the Defiant was more like a good sized screen TV.
But going back to like
the Defiant was, like he said, a washing machine. It was
huge.
Yeah.
But going back to like the beginning of it is that at that time that was like a bat cave. That was always that Christmas item. Because you don't have kids anymore. Now what you're doing is you're going with the mentality of adult completists that all year round are buying the latest wave of whatever and the latest this and the latest that. And then you drop a big item in their lap that's expensive on top of, hey, are you also going to be backing us with our HasLab? Hey, by the way, are you also going to be getting our latest this and that from all our other lines that you also kind of collect? So
what you're hinting on is you're not talking about like 6 or 7 $20 items. You're talking about, we want you to get these 4 or 5 $20 items.
It makes it hard.
We have a $45 price tag, and then we have a $90 one, and then Hasbro Pulse has this one, and it's just too much. And then
a legendary now history of clearance, which just makes everyone go, "I'll just wait and see," in my
opinion, the Triptychon was the worst.
Oh yeah, well the Triptychon, but even look, Commander Class Rodimus through Kingdom sold ridiculously poorly and was clearanced like crazy. So it's something.
Was it the Scourge when that one?
Oh yeah,
out? That thing just hit clearance. Like I never once saw it in a store, but I did see it in TJ Maxx.
Yeah, it's something where you reach a point where you go, I'm trading money, but that money is my time and my effort and work and stuff like that. And you could only be burned so many times where you buy stuff full price out of excitement and then turn around and see it 50% or even more, 70%. And that has been happening a lot recently, just in the recent market of how things are going with the toy industry, and Hasbro recognizing it themselves, and Nate from marketing saying, hey, we're going to be pulling this back. We're going to go from 4 waves to 3. We're going to be doing less product a year. Hey, remember when Generation 1, all of 1984 was only 27 products? Hey, remember when 1985 was only 34 products? Hey, you remember when all of Beast Wars was only 19 products in its first wave? And we're talking an entire year of 1996. So it's like they're going to probably be turning back to an era where they're just going to be focusing on less products. And what I think also less products, but what I mean that they're still going to be putting out more products, but the more products are going to be reissues. We're going to get less new products. And then they're going to be like, well, let's also fire up the tooling and reissue DevCon again, which they did recently, it's
to me, like when it comes, like if you're going to do, like you said, like DevCon, like there's certain ones they've only done like a one shot. The only thing they really can do is another one-shot reissue, something like that.
Well, I think they're at a point now where if they feel they could get away, like the best example is that first wave Studio Series 86 Grimlock. If they feel like in 2026 they could put that thing out again and sell just as many units again, separating it. When did it come out? In 2023? So like, 3 years later, we put it out again and it sells just as many. I could see them doing that. It's something that they're in. It's a very different world today. We just came out of the holiday season, and you really, actions speak louder than words. And we came out of the holiday season. The Q4 reports are now out going into Q1 2025. And guess what? Hey, all you Americans, they're like, oh man, Canada's so lucky to have Toys R Us. Yeah, we're closing 70% of our Toys R Us's in Canada as of this year because how poorly the toy industry performed during the holidays of just last season.
Well,
like
I can see a lot of this stuff becoming more of an online exclusive thing because less brick and mortar stores, less product these companies have to build to fill these shelves. Like
the moment you have less of those, there's less places that have to be shipped to, and especially when you're talking large price points, when you're talking stuff like a Titan class. First of all, we don't even see them anymore in retail. So, Walmart doesn't design their shelves to carry it anymore. It's too much of a risk to have a big product like that to be damaged and or stolen. And by stolen, I mean someone opens up the box, steals a head, and now that product's damaged and useless. So it's something where they're just so much better off just having it be online only, having it being more of a collector's item, which is, I mean, think about it. We just had a 2 back-to-back HasLab items. And how much were those 2 HasLab items? They were $179.99, more than what some of our Titans were.
Yeah.
So if a HasLab item is going to be $179.99, and we're expected to have mass-produced retail items like a $200 Nemesis, man, everything's just like, I think if anything, we're going to get to the point where only those items will be HasLab items. Who knows?
Well, this is the thing. Like, I understand like all this stuff that happened when the Nemesis and the Arc came out. I'm always kind of people like, what if they just scrapped the entire robot mode, but they made, say, the Arc turn into the mountain it crashed into, and then said they did the same thing with the Nemesis. I know the Nemesis isn't actually the ship that is under the sea for the Decepticons, but if they did do something like that would interact more with those robots, I personally think those two probably would have sold better because at least it becomes more of a background piece for people to do their toy photography.
I respectfully disagree, only because I don't think it would have changed one way or another its selling. I think that people look at the price, and that's where, like, if the Arc out of the gate was $100 instead of $150, I think that would have helped it sell better. Not changing the product at all. Same thing with the Nemesis. It being $200 and no longer being in retail, and people seeing what happened with the Arc with clearance, dours people's ability to want to engage and pre-order with the product. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing like what happens with movies. People are like, oh, that movie didn't do well because it was a bad movie. No.
Snow White.
People don't know it's... Well, let me ask you something. People don't know if a movie is bad unless they see it. And in order to see it, you have to give it money. The thing is, there's certain movies that don't perform well, and it has nothing to do with the fact if the movie is good or bad. It's just people weren't interested. Best example, like, people go, oh, like the conversation I have sometimes with Hasbro internal guys is how you fix G.I. Joe. And it's always like, oh, the Snake Eyes movie wasn't accurate or wasn't any good. And I go, no, it has nothing to do with the Snake Eyes movie being accurate or any good. It has to do with the fact that when you take the average moviegoer and they're standing at the box office and making a decision of how they're going to spend their Friday night, they are not even interested. They're not someone that's like, oh, it's not screen accurate to Larry Hama's ba 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 ba. They don't care about that. They want to be entertained and or intrigued. And that's why no one showed up. Was Transformers 1 an amazing movie?
Yeah. I personally
No one showed up. So it has nothing to do with quality of the product sometimes. It has to do with if people are even interested. And something like the Arc, it was a sticker shock. It was them going, I don't know, $169.99 in this current economic climate, and what happened with some of the past big guys, I'm just going to wait for a sale. And then, Hasbro also, it's kind of their fault. They overproduced the Arc because, oh my God, it's the Arc. This is going to be a big deal. And we have the Netflix series, and the Arc is going to be in that too. So None of that worked out in the end.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the domino effect that just happened afterwards from the rest of that too. So at the end of the day, it's just something where I respectfully disagree with that, only because just the way the current market is, I don't think it would have changed anything. I really don't. Right? Like the problem with, and I know you're not going to like this statement because you're a big G2 guy, but I feel that Transformers right now as a brand is in its G2 era, in that it's trying to figure out who its market is.
Yeah.
Because back in 1993, it literally put on the top of that first issue comic, what did it say, Jason?
Not your father's Autobot.
This is not your father. So how old were you? How old were the kids? I mean, literally, you had to have people in 1984 be 21 years old by the time, they for fathers at that point, and then have their kids be old enough to read that comic cover and then be able to make that marketing hype statement.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that G2 had a little bit of identity crisis, and not so much G2, but just the brand of Transformers at the time. At this point, Ninja Turtles had already taken away the eyeballs.
That's
in 1993.
Kenner, you guys take care of it.
Well, it's exactly that. It was Ninja Turtles took away the eyeballs. Toy Biz was killing it with the X-Men line and what was going on with the cartoons there. Then you have Power Rangers show up and go, here, hold my beer. So they were in this identity crisis where it's not that Transformers sucked. G2 toys are great. G2 toys are fun. The comics were fantastic with Simon Furman, but nobody cared. Everyone's eyeballs were elsewhere. And that's where Transformers is right now. I'm not saying that the Ark is a shitty toy. I'm not saying that any of the stuff that we've been getting is crap. I'm not saying that Transformers 1 was a bad movie. I think it's, dare I say, hot take, maybe the best Transformer movie ever made, But, and that includes the 86 movie. But that being said, no one cared and no one showed up. And so that's where you have this identity crisis where you have to have a Kenner Beast Wars situation for the Transformers brand right now, where you have to be so low right now, where you got to take risks and reinvent, because and when you're talking reinventing, I mean, look at what price points were at the end of G2 with Cyberjets and G2 GoBots and laser rods and all of that shit. Like, you're in a situation where all of that existed, and then you flip over to late 95, early 96 with Beast Wars, and what was invented for the first time in Transformers history? The standardized price point. The basic, the deluxe, the mega, which would become Voyager, the ultra, which would become a quasi-Human Alliance leader, but then that's more of the super. But regardless of the fact, so we ended up in this new era of a new standardized price point, how a new company, a new way to advertise the product using CG through a Canadian company that was untested at the time, except for Reboot. Like, they took a whole bunch of risks. I mean, the whole history of Beast Wars origin is absolutely fascinating because it involves McDonald's and everything also taken apart. Like, but the point is that I think we have to be at such a low point now where there has to be a reinvention, and we can't just continuously over and over be leaning on Generation 1. We've been
that's been my thing. Like, go ahead, Megan.
Hang on. First thing, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
We know you dropped out a couple times.
Stupid 10-year-old computer finally just said, nah, I'm going to take a break.
10 years old? Mine's probably been...
Actually, I think my computer's
over
than that.
Oh, mine is.
I think it's closer to 15.
Mine is, yeah.
Anyway, so I missed some of the things we were talking about. But yeah, it's funny because you mentioned price point and classification, and for me, I did G1, I did G2, and then I dropped out until I saw Beast Wars, and that's what got me back into it. Beast Wars got me back into Transformers. It's just the way it is.
Machine Wars.
Well, Machine Wars was in 97 during Beast Wars.
Well, it gets better because that stuff I only remember at clearance. So.
Yeah, well, you know what? I don't think. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think I ever saw a Machine Wars toy with a full price sticker on it. That's why, like,
I don't think I ever saw Machine Wars outside KB.
No, it was a KB exclusive line. It was a KB.
I'm just saying, it was always discounted. Always.
a quick history of Machine Wars. That wasn't even supposed to happen. What happened was they did a BotCon back in 1996, and someone asked a question to, at the time it was the Kenner execs that were working on Beast Wars, and they said, "Would you ever bring back vehicles for Transformers?" And
Right.
I think they misinterpreted the question, and they were thinking of Transmetals, and they said, "Yeah, we're bringing back vehicles," right? So it created all this excitement. Oh my God, we're getting back vehicles and stuff, and it created all these rumors and stuff. And then it went back to Hasbro. They were like, well, we kind of said that, and we don't have to follow it up, but we do have a couple of trademarks that we need to protect. And this goes back to this old conversation again. Did they use Starscream in Beast Wars? No.
Throw out
Did
some names.
they use Optimus Prime in Beast Wars? No. Did they use Mirage in Beast Wars? No. So they had to throw those out. They had to use those to keep those alive. And that's why, like, when you get into Magnaboss and Tripredacus, you get some of those ram horns and iron hides and prowls and, what was it, Silverbolt initially before the Fuser character, so it's a classic example of just all of that stuff that was out there. Again, the standardized price point was a big deal because the moment they brought in the standardized price point, now they were able to kind of have a system of toy development, which before that it was, okay, we make Metroplex. What's the budget on it? Well, it's this. Okay, so this is what we're going to work with. Now, when they knew that year to year, month to month, this is what a Voyager is, and you have to stay within those parameters in terms of plastic, budget, decos, all of that stuff. And when we're having that conversation, we're talking packaging as part of that too. Aaron Archer said it the best. He's like, people complained about the deluxes during Armada, how like simple they were. But when you really think about it, like if you ever held an Armada toy mint in package, so you have the base figure, which was simple, but then you had the Minicon, then you had the sticker, which was a trading card, then you had the pack-in comic book, which was also the instructions, and then you had this multi-layered crazy bubble that was on top of it. So and then all the twist ties too. He always talks about how Armada Unicron, if you took all the twist ties out that attached to that figure, it would be equal to that of 3 deluxe Transformers in terms of plastic. It was insane how much twist ties were used.
I remember that.
but it's something where that's where the standardized price point really helped Transformers be able to plan for the long run in the future. And that's why Beast Wars, for multitudes of reasons, was such an important moment in Transformers history for the line.
I agree with that, but my problem is that they keep changing the price points.
Oh, and now see, I wish I could post it up on the screen. I wish I could post it up again. I don't want to plug, but I did a segment just a couple of days ago talking about the history of price points because of all the tariff stuff. And I'm telling you, man, it was after Revenge of the Fallen. It was like sharks smelling blood in the water, meaning the money was big. They were making crazy money. And then it was like, all right, every 2 years we're raising the MSRP. And they had not stopped since, where up to that point, a deluxe was $10 from the day of Blue Eyes Cheetor literally up until Premium Barricade from 2008. A deluxe had stayed $10 for more than 10 years. And then the second they smelled the blood in the water, and they were making crazy money, hand over fist money. Every 2 years, they're raising the MSRP because they wanted to post profits year after year. Because up to that point, and I have this great graph of Hasbro's stocks since literally its inception back in the day. And it's like, you could look at the ups and downs, and man, that movie year was just, they were crushing it for sales that they had never seen before. They had high hopes with Kenner and Star Wars Episode 1 and everything. Man, those red cards sold poorly, They had all those other high hopes for other big movie brands. So it could have went
really well before that for Star Wars.
Power of the Force. Shadows of the Empire. Well, all the Power of the Force stuff up.
Well, Power of the Force did, but Shadows of the Empire itself actually did more because it was a whole new thing. It was,
but it was also it was part of that Power of the Force line where there, that was, if you were a reader of Toy Fair magazine back in the day, that was when I compare Power of the Force was the beginning of adult toy collecting. It existed prior to that, but I'm saying that's when it was solidified that this exists in the real world.
Yeah,
Like that now
just recently, something I actually got it sitting over here, hanging up actually. I did do a review of Dash Rendar.
Great figure.
One of my favorite figures. So underrated. Yes, I know this is Star Wars. I don't care what you guys say. I love Star Wars and I loved Shadows of the Empire. It was my favorite thing.
Yep.
And I hated the fact we never got a movie. I was so mad that we didn't get a movie for it.
Well, I'm not going to get into the Disney conversation.
I can tell you that there's comics and everything, but I can also tell you that the only Shadows of the Empire figures I ever saw were on clearance.
You know what? But the thing is, there was a lot of that out there. Like at the time, Kenner was really putting a lot of that product out, and it was
started to 94, 95 Star Wars orange carded back bull crap and all that. Oh my god, it was so bad.
There was a lot of it though, but it again, it really a lot of ways it changed the industry and how they looked at collectibles for toys and stuff like that. And Kenner and Hasbro, they really recognized that back then. And it was, again, if you were reading Toy Fair magazine and how that the adult market started to really shift, and there was like, just imagine these are figures based off of characters that had not been on the screen. Keep in mind, the special editions had not been out yet, that had not been on the screen for quite a few years. And shout out to, he's no longer with us, but Mark Brand, who designed all of those back in the day. He was like a Hasbro legend. He was like the guy who like practically invented Nerf and stuff. Like all of those guys, and this is all stories I hear through Aaron and stuff, like, incredibly talented individuals in that industry. But it's just, anyways, I'm going to have to wrap it up, guys, soon because we're getting late.
Cool. We're way over. We usually only do
I know it's my fault.
Okay.
It's my fault. It's my fault.
It's awesome having you on here. I had no idea you were going to pop in. So you pop in.
I literally on my Discord just saw, Plasticon's on his webcam. That's what it showed. Like it has a little icon. And I went, oh, fuck it. I got a couple minutes. Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, a couple minutes.
I just want to give a little shout out, just to let people know, self-plug, June 18th, Mega Man coming out. I'm going to be the head writer of the Mega Man comic books. So
where do I get a copy of that? Because I don't have local comic shops or anything.
So if you don't, local comic shop, go into your local comic shop. They have Preview Magazine. They'll be able to pre-order you a copy. How Udon Comics works is they don't want to undercut local comic shops, so they wait. I believe it's 2 weeks after the pre-order date closes. So I believe the pre-orders will be on their website. I want to say May 12th. Hold on a second. Whatever's going to be the Wednesday that door closes.
It's gotta be a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's always a Wednesday.
Do you have a link?
It'll be udonentertainment.com, which is that right now you can
actually have a link to your thing.
It'll be
in this video so that way people can go check it out.
It'll be May. Well, it won't be now. It'll be May 14th. Will probably when it'll be on the website. Okay. So we'll cover it then when the time comes. Cool. But yeah, that's a big thing that I've been working on behind the scenes since last San Diego when we had a big meeting and stuff. And so very happy. Again, everyone knows the name Protoman, but they don't sometimes know where it originated from.
I'm a huge
and so
Mega Man fan. Always have been.
And
I don't know if
so
you was into Mega Man or not. Were you?
Yeah, it's fine. It's cool. It's cool, brother. It's more just
video games, But.
Yeah, it's just for me. It's a little bit of a dream to finally be able to like write for the brand and really kind of steer it in a creative way.
Just a little one.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's crazy. But and now that's all public now. I was talking with you about it. Plasticon.
Oh, beforehand. I see. Because I didn't play video games. I'm the out guy. I get it.
No, it's cool, brother. Well, you know what? There wasn't a lot of good Transformer video games for like 2 decades, so it's fine. I could definitely relate to that.
That I hope we get a good one.
Because of video games, no.
So, yeah. But yeah, so just want to kind of just plug that too. So if you are a comic book reader and you are interested in the Mega Man brand, pre-orders for Mega Man X Timelines issue number 1 are open right now at your local comic book store. And then again, I'm predicting May 14th is when it'll be on their website, because they want the local comic stores to get their money first, and for pre-orders, and then they do their pre-orders after that window closes, because the window always closes like a month before, and then they do it on their website. Because I believe when you pre-order comics, correct me if I'm wrong, I usually just do a pull bin and I never pay attention to the exact dates, but it's usually 2 months before. So that's why the pre-orders are open right now, and then it's going to be 1 month before it'll be on their website. So just kind of wanted to plug that too.
Okay.
So
awesome.
I'm very proud. I'm very proud of it. Very proud of it. So
congratulations, man. Seriously.
Thank you. Very. You know what? A lot of people have been congratulating me, but it's also thanks to the fans, because I think my ability to get the opportunity to do that is because of the success that I had within the Transformer community and the stock that it grew there. And then that kind of creates the confidence that those companies then have for me to be able to steer the ship and write their material. So it's thanks to the fans too, like them being a fan of my material and the positive vibes that they give through that. I mean, that's how I got a lot of my opportunities to begin with. People ain't saying you good, you never know. So
it's very true.
And yes, Leo, Jada is making amazing Mega Man figures, and there's way more to come at San Diego next year. So stay tuned
on that, because that'd be amazing.
Oh my God, if they could. Geez, $4 Mega Man figures or whatever, $3 Mega Man figures. The Blockies did that. Blockies, though, is crushing it right now. They're getting a lot of IPs. Like, what I like about Blockies is it's ridiculously cheap to manufacture. The Tampo budget on it, for some wacky reason, is extremely high. And man, like, they're just crushing it. Like, I think if you're a huge fan of Transformers 1, I just want them to do all the non-transformable characters, because we're never going to get the miners done proper in toy form.
Some of them, I thought.
No, but a lot of the non-transformable ones, though. Like think about all those characters that didn't transform, right? So if you want to get proper representations of those that are in scale with your figures, I think Blockies would be perfect. You know what I mean? Like, think about like that scene where Jazz is standing next to Orion Pax and he's just towering over him. A Blockie would be perfect for that. Because we don't have a trend.
Can I just say one thing about that?
Go ahead, my brother.
Just wait.
Just wait. Yeah, he's not wrong.
just wait.
Yeah, well, for sure, I feel all of those characters are going to get done in some shape or form. But at the same time, it's like, man, I love it. If you go to TFCon, what I love about it is people will buy a case of Blockies, like a 9-pack case, and they'll just split the cost amongst each other, and it comes to like $250 each, and then everyone just picks one at random, and it's like, and then you get a amazing action figure for $2.50.
This close, because I was at Planet Comic Con 2 weeks ago, and there was a guy there selling cases of Blockies that was this close to pulling the trigger on.
How much was it? Like, it's like
45 a case.
Yeah, there. It's great. It's crazy how cheap it is.
And then
you mess, and then you build the figures, and think about, there's multiple hands, multiple weapons, and you're going, and a stand, and you're going, and a pog, like there's a little pog that comes with it. And you're just like, how do they pull?
Is amazing there.
Oh yeah, and the standardized how they pull this off, I have no. Again, probably because it's made out of China and it's made cheaply, the manufacturing in terms of like cost. But man, like the people need to wake up to that and start looking at, like, if they could pull that off, and all of that, like, some of these companies need to wake up and stop looking at their Q4 reports and really just start thinking about, just making the best possible product and think about the prices. Really, you gotta, I mean, there's, just before we go, there's this great image, like, I'm pretty, you guys heard about the Maximum Spider-Man figure through Marvel Legends, how they're trying to make a whole new price point with Marvel Legends that's going to be like $60. And, they're trying to like sell it to us that, like, oh, it has to be like this because we have multiple hands and all this stuff. And then at the same time, there's WWE's Mattel line that does the exact same thing, and it's $39.99. So, and they all have the same factories. That's the thing that's unfortunate, is a lot of these companies use the same factories for manufacturing their products. It's all just how they choose of what they want to feel their MSRP number is.
Well, it also has to do with licensing. You know that.
Oh well, but Hasbro owns all their stuff. So even that argument.
You're talking about all
Yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, but
Licensing and everything,
it's
so.
it's just it gets to a point where it's like I think Hasbro, they need to take a step back and realize that it's okay to make less profit in a quarter and now it has to be always up. Hey, every year we're making money. Every year we're making money. It doesn't work like that anymore. Now you have to be able to once in a while not make money, make less. It's still good. You didn't lose money. Just, oh, this quarter we only made 17 million instead of 19 million. And that 17 million that you lost, it was because you charged less for the product and more people were able to engage. And then it's like sell them the cigarettes so they could be a fan forever, as opposed to, unfortunately, oh, hey, we didn't do well. Hey, John Warden, who's been with the company for 27 years, you're fired because you're a senior member and we need to save money instead of paying you every month. And that's a sad reality. It's something that they kind of look at senior members of the team and they get rid of them because, as you stay there longer, your paycheck swells, and it's so much easier to get rid of someone who's been on the company forever and just hire someone younger who just wants to get paid, even if it's significantly less.
Unfortunately,
So
that's the world we live in right now, man. That's been
and
that way
yeah,
with
but
every job, not just this company.
to quote the Iron Sheik, some people need to get humbled, and it's just like, that's the problem. I think that sometimes, like, I feel that, again, much like I was saying how Beast Wars came to be, you need to have excessive failure before you could get humbled and then reinvent. And sometimes I wish that
G1 is kind of petering out a little bit. No offense, guys. I know you guys love Generation 1, but I think we need to go a different direction with Transformers for like what you're talking about.
Generation 1 has been Generation 1 has been 8 years. The Neo Generation 1, which started in 2006 with Classics, has been around for how long? 20 effing years soon? So G1 has been Neo G1 that we're living in now has been G1 longer than actual G1, by almost double, so it's like, it's time to reinvent. It's time to think of new things. I'm looking at what Hasbro's proposing with Cyber World and Wild King on the Japanese side.
Dude,
they have the right.
I watched Wild King like the first 2 episodes and I thought it was funny. And I loved it.
I love it. It's just, it's a shame that we're in that 4-minute storytelling episode, kind of situation, which is like, I mean, if that was a 21-minute episode series with deep storytelling and stuff, Takara has got it going.
Well,
but
getting into the media side of things, unfortunately, that's the world we live in right now. We've got
people that
are pretty much 8-second rodeo riders now.
Don't even get me started with.
But
yeah, I literally
capturing someone's attention for an extended period of time is really hard nowadays.
I literally just had that conversation with, I can't talk about which companies, but we were talking about what's called the getting the eyeballs from the screens, and it was just like, the ability they have through Netflix, which is retention, and they're able to know how long does someone watch a show before they push that back button on Netflix. And it's like, man, they are struggling to get all these new kid shows and people to go past 4 minutes without going back and getting bored on a 21-minute.
That's the world we live in.
And it's fucking wild just having those conversations where it's like, oh my God, you know what? Maybe we should burn it all down. Like, if this is the world we're in, where it's like there's ADD on
to burn it down. People,
but it would just get rid of
how they're doing things.
It's burned down the whole process of how we're handling social media and stuff. It's like we're creating a whole demographic of children that are not going to have attention spans at all. They're going to be fried, man. Like, they're going to go into the real world and they're going to be expected to sit in an 8-hour seat for a job. Maybe that's why we're going towards AI, because I don't think we're going to be able to have those workers.
We're not going to be. You from my experience, because I worked in the movie theater for a while, worked with a lot of the younger kids coming in on it's still in high school, going into about to go into college.
Yeah,
some of their attention spans are not there. They complain about the smallest and littlest things, and
it's brutal.
I don't sugarcoat things, never have. And I told them, I was like, guys, you're going to have to buck up. This is the real world. This is what it is. It isn't always going to be on this little silly device that you have in your hand. It just won't.
And the stakes are much bigger. You're in a situation where, if you screw up in school, you get second and third chances and detentions. You screw up in the real world of work and you're unemployed and then homeless, so it's something where I worry for the future for that, and as someone that, looks very favorably in hoping that people shape up and not slip out. And it's something where I don't know. And again, those conversations that I have with companies, it's always because they always have everything is always planned 2 years in advance. And it's always us going like, man, what is the state of the industry going to be in 2 years? What is the state of the market going to be in 2 years?
And that's where we have to look at it this way. Like, people still read comics. People still watch cartoons. They just
to a degree
spend hours. They spend maybe a few minutes or however long they have to just enjoy that for like a few seconds sometimes.
Free Comic Book Day was invented because of that. Free Comic Book Day was, hey man, it is really tough to get their attention. So let's try to give them, again, I use the term always, their first cigarette, and then hope they get addicted to that. And the only way you can get them addicted is if it's free, because they are not gonna spend $3.99 on a comic book, on a risk that it might be entertaining to them. So that's where like a Free Comic Book Day comes in, where it's like, okay, if we give them a bunch of books for free, then maybe they might get into this, and then they'd be willing to put their money into it. But that's a whole other conversation. I think we've already stretched this out. I apologize again.
Just a little bit
but,
here, guys.
Yeah.
We don't.
I'm sure people enjoyed
like
it.
An hour here, but we've gone an hour and a half over. But that's okay.
Beauty.
Because Protoman joined us. It was me and Megamus bantering about combining robots, and it's all fun. So.
And things that turn into doohickeys.
Things that turn into doohickeys. So, Megamus, you got any last words, brother?
No. I mean, the big thing is, we all have different ideas of. Our topic was combiners. In case you didn't remember. We all have different ideas about that, and that's all good and everything. And right now, as I said at the beginning, Target right now is 30% off.
Yep. So, across everything.
The brand new ones. Got a brand new one today. 30% off. So
if you guys are after that G2 Grimlock, I hear they have them. Get them.
Get them.
Well, don't complain about it later when it's expensive.
When somebody's putting it on eBay because they scalped them for you. Because you know it's going to happen. Especially with discounts like this. People will buy multiples. So.
Totally.
But anyway.
Alrighty.
With that being said, thank you, Protoman. Thank you, Megamus, for joining us on this Plasticast. I know this is a very long-winded one.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. And like I was saying, you guys can scan that QR code there. They'll send you Back in Time Comics and Toys. They have a lot of stuff on eBay, but if you're looking for something, you can message them directly, and they might actually have it in the store, or you never know. Lots of vintage toys, lots of comics. You name it, they pretty much have it. And if not, Sean will end up getting it somehow. He always does. He's always buying. So, but anyway, thank you guys for joining us, and I am going to sign us off. So peace out, y'all, and we'll see you next week.
Later.